Test. First meeting on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of January. Can I take it that these are an accurate record of what took place? Thank you. I shall sign them later. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Does anyone have a declaration of interest to make? Thank you. There's nobody in arrears on their council tax. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3, public participation. Is there any public participation that we're aware of? None? Thank you. We now come to agenda item 4, which is announcements by the Mayor. I have none, but I think that I should slip in something rather unofficial, though Councillor Elliott did offer to help me on this one. We are holding a quiz to help out my charity, Decorum Community Trust, which is a very good charity which gives grants and furniture to people who are in desperate straits. It's like a matter of last resort, and it's well worth supporting. That quiz night is going to be held here on the 17th of next month, 17th of March, and it costs only £12.50, including nibbles. And I hope as many of you will support my charity as can do. Thank you very much. Chief Executive, do you have any?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Group leaders.
Mr Mayor, just to tender apologies on behalf of Councillor Wyatt Lowe and Iguchi.
Thank you. Lib Dems, Count.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Yes, Mr Mayor, sorry about that. Apologies from William Allen and Philip McDowell, and I believe Semi Dahini is going to be late, or is attempting to get here.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We now come to the portfolio holders. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just briefly, to keep Council updated, I was asked at the last Council meeting to write to the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Secretary of State for Energy or Energy Security as it is now. Just to say I haven't forgotten, I just have not yet received replies from either of those. I will circulate them as soon as I have. Happy to take questions.
Are there any questions for Councillor Williams on this matter? Or others? Thank you. We turn then to Councillor Banks, portfolio holder for communities. Councillor Banks.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Turning first to regulatory services, I'm pleased to report that the Air Quality Action Plan has been updated and the revocation of the Air Quality Management Area up at Northchurch has been approved by Cabinet. I'm also pleased to announce that the capital funding has been secured to replace and relocate the real-time air quality analyser. I'm also pleased to report that the Food Safety Service Recovery Plan has been approved. 2 unrelated fly tipping offences were prosecuted since I last spoke, both convicted after pleading guilty in their cases to the unauthorised deposit of controlled waste in rural locations around the borough. They were collectively ordered to pay fines of £4,630, costs of £3,461, and a victim surcharge of £553. I'm optimistic, as ever, that the press release will deter those who would seek to fly tip in our district, in our borough. And once again, I remind members, residents and visitors that under this Conservative administration, we have a zero tolerance for environmental crime, especially fly tipping. On that note, having been nominated for the prestigious Keep Britain Tidy Excellence in Environmental Enforcement Award, Ben Stevens, a DBC officer, was just pipped at the post for the main award, but we're so proud of the team and its achievements having been shortlisted. We were up against local authorities, other local authorities, and knew that Decorum was in the top 3, others being London boroughs or large unitary authorities. I am sure, Mr Mayor, that you'll join me and all members in congratulating not only Ben and his team, but once again Decorum for its outstanding achievements in tackling environmental crime, making Decorum a cleaner, safer, greener place for us all. While we're talking awards, the Animal Welfare Award has been successfully awarded the Golden Paw Print Award for the excellent service provided around stray dogs. All members are reminded that the Council does have responsibilities under the Animal Welfare Act, and concerns should be reported through the Animal Welfare inbox. Turning to community, Mr Mayor, the cost of living support, I'm pleased to say that the website is now being regularly updated with help and advice for those that are struggling with the cost of living, and that Community Action Decorum are running a series of community engagement events in the coming weeks, and there'll be a schedule of events published through our usual channels. Mr. Mayor, can I again remind everyone we are all impacted by the rising cost of living. We all need to consider our personal finances, but crucially, we are not alone. There is help available, and I would ask people to reach out and secure that help and support if ever needed. Our next round of community grants will be running in April, and we have additional points being awarded for those that are looking at the cost of living support and events around the King's coronation. Community safety, being conscious of our residents who may face issues around safeguarding, antisocial behaviour and the like. I have arranged for members to have a copy of the "If you see it, say it" on your desks. This is a hard copy, though electronic copies are available for those that prefer, and I would ask members to take an opportunity to look at the advice and support available for those vulnerable in our communities. Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Councillor England.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What is the portfolio holder doing about the discovery of poor air quality at the junction of Marlows and Queensway, found to be above the legal limit in 2021, and now as bad as Lawn Lane and Apsley London Road?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor England, thank you for your question. I'd like to remind members and residents that may be here with us this evening or listening in that in fact we have a very clear, clean air quality. There are only 3 areas that have levels that are above the DEFRA guidelines, and we are working closely with stakeholders and partners, for example, Herts County Council, to ensure that remedial action is taken to bring those issues under control. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You have a supplementary, Councillor England.
The ASR for 2021 showed that readings were taken in the area that I mentioned, Queensway and Marlows, just up the road from here, which show air quality as bad as Lawn Lane and Apsley London Road. What action did the portfolio holder take when notified of the breach on the 21st of December last year? And why didn't she ask for it to be reported to SPEI?
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor,
Banks.
Councillor England, thank you for your question. Once again, part of the responsibilities as a borough is that we monitor air quality and that we alert partners and stakeholders like Hertfordshire County Council to the issues that we may be facing locally. I'm not aware of the information that Councillor England is giving this evening. If I may, I'll take that away and confer with officers before responding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Councillor England, you happy with that? I'm not asking you to be ecstatic. I mean, is that satisfactory for the moment?
I'm just wondering now if the portfolio holder reads her emails at all.
I shall pass over that one. Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is about the increased dog attacks, particularly in Northchurch, and what we can come up with together to protect not just dogs but the public from them. The background is that people have been reporting an increase of dog-on-dog attacks in and around Northchurch. My own personal experience is that my dog was nearly killed and was extremely fortunate to survive as a dog went for the jugular, and others sadly have had their dogs killed, and the impact of that on someone elderly or a child, a vulnerable person out with their dog cannot be underestimated. What I discovered through my experience is that dog-on-dog attacks cannot be reported to the police under the Dangerous Dog Act. And so when I reported to the dog warden. In our particular case, there was an opportunity of getting CCTV from the local shop where the owner had been, and the wardens say they have difficulty gathering this evidence from the retailers. So my question is it time to have a proper review of what powers the dog wardens have and have proper training so that they can take some proactive action? Because these dog attacks are happening because the owners are irresponsible and don't have the dogs on leads or muzzled when they should be, and it's only a matter of time before the attack could be on a child. So it's really, really important that we work together and try and work out how we can best empower our dog wardens to protect the public. Thank you.
Councillor Banks.
Mr Mayor, thank you, Councillor Pringle. I absolutely agree with you. You know, everyone's dog is the cutest dog until it takes a child's face off, or, you know, some other terrible accident, or indeed that other dogs and animals are harmed. I noted that Boxmoor Trust have been advertising and promoting their Please Keep Your Dogs on Lead away from our cattle as the calving season comes around. As I said in my presentation, we have been awarded the Golden Paw Print for demonstrating our commitment to looking after strays. I appreciate that you're talking not necessarily about stray dogs, but certainly dogs off lead. And our public space protection order does require that if you're challenged by an enforcement officer, you need to be able to demonstrate that you have a lead and put your dog on that lead should there be an issue. I appreciate that the police are limited in what they can do, but I really would ask that if you have any incidents or your residents do, that you do mail the animal welfare inbox and see if the dog warden is able to.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Councillor Pringle, you have a supplementary?
Well, the supplementary seems to be that where there is a series of similar offences, that the dog warden should be able to see that they're linked and see if they can investigate it as a sort of whole case rather than individual separate ones. So it seems that these are linked. But I'll leave it to the email. Thank you very much for your response.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. Councillor Guest.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry?
I was going to respond.
I'm sorry, I didn't see any question there. I thought Councillor Pringle was simply...
Can we take action to ensure that the wardens will link the case?
Councillor Banks.
Mr Mayor, Councillor Pringle, thank you for clarifying the question there. I was keen to get to my feet and answer you. Absolutely, that is exactly why I'm asking people to report it, so that they can build up a pattern of incidents and hopefully identify the dogs involved and therefore the owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And what is the definition of controlled waste, which the portfolio holder stated someone was prosecuted for fly tipping?
Councillor Banks.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Guest. Controlled waste is things like, items that should be properly disposed of under licence, like building materials, plumbing. Thank you.
Dangerous
And the like.
liquids, etc.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Does the portfolio holder agree that the prosecution of individuals for fly tipping such waste is a good deterrent to prevent such incidents happening in the future?
Councillor Banks.
Mr Mayor, Councillor Guest, absolutely. That's why I'm very keen that these successful prosecutions are advertised not only locally but also across border in Luton and surrounding districts to highlight just how unacceptable this behaviour is.
Thank you. Councillor Binder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Just one moment, please, Councillor Binder. Please proceed. I was looking at the screen.
Thank you. I just wondered if the portfolio holder had any information regarding Dacorum Borough Council's arrangements with regards to the coronation if it's a bit too early, I don't know.
Councillor Banks?
Mr Mayor, Councillor Binder, thank you for your question. Indeed, the 6th of May will be celebrating the King's coronation. Our main events will be in Gadebridge Park on the 6th and the 7th of May. On the 6th, we'll have the big screen in Gadebridge Park broadcasting the coronation, together with entertainment for the family, including arts, crafts, farmyard animals, face painting, the fair, crazy golf, and so much more. Don't forget the food and drink. And on the 7th of May, there will be stalls in the park and in the Old Town High Street, and a live screening of the park, of the coronation concert from Windsor. So an action-packed weekend for residents in Dacorum.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Well, now that you've informed your partner of what's going on, do you have if I may be allowed a quick question, do you have plans to advertise it more widely?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Absolutely. This is just the beginning of the planning process, and we will indeed be flooding our social media and our various other communication channels.
Thank you very much. Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to ask Councillor Banks very quickly, there's a lot of antisocial behaviour going on in Bunkers Park at the moment, which is being regularly reported. Horses riding and galloping or cantering, and not dogs, paragliders and things like this. And I just wondered what we can do about it, please, because it's driving all the residents crazy.
Thank you, Councillor Madden. I'll allow you to answer this question. You've run out of time, but please
Mr Mayor,
answer the
thank
question.
you. Councillor Madden, thank you. I am aware that there have been some antisocial behaviour reports associated with Bunkers Park. I will get an update for you and report back to you separately.
Thank you very much, Councillor Banks. We turn now to Councillor Anderson, portfolio holder for Place.
Good evening, Mr Mayor.
Good evening.
Report on the housing moratorium. The council is continuing to work through the backlog of residential applications once developers agree the financial contributions involved. The council has collected £72,000 already for council-owned SANG, Suitable Alternative Natural Green Space. Marshcroft Farm Tree, the appeal against refusal of 1,400 homes starts at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 7th of March, and is due to end on the 12th of April. The outcome will have a massive impact on Dacorum, and the council, I can reassure members that the council has put in a considerable effort and resource into contesting the appeal as best as the council can. Community infrastructure levy. Last week's Cabinet agreed to release a small proportion of the council's core SIL funding so that it can be spent on some local infrastructure improvement projects. The Cabinet considered recommendations from the Infrastructure Advisory Group on the bids for this funding, which have been received by the council. I hope colleagues will agree the new process for core SIL spending, which later this evening on the agenda. Luton Airport. Council's been notified by the Planning Inspectorate that London Luton Airport Limited is due to submit the development consent order for the expansion of the airport later this month. Officers working with other host authorities on coordinating our objections during the determination process. Under economic development, the economic recovery plan is continuing, and on a different subject, the council, it has been confirmed by the government, the council is receiving £1.76 million over 3 years from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. And the council is working with partners, including the voluntary sector and the Hearts Let, on the spending plan, which will support a wide range of local projects. Finally, under economic development, with the news about Amazon, the work continues with partners such as the Job Centre to continue picking up the pieces. Place strategy, the council and its partner is continuing to analyse the results from the Hemel Place survey and the different narratives for the 3 towns, for Hemel, Hempstead, Berkhamsted and Town, are at various stages of development, and that work continues. On the Hemel Hempstead Old Town strategy, Phase 2 of the planters and public realm improvements is continuing, and partially pinched by Councillor Banks a moment ago, arrangements are being put in place for the coronation weekend on the 6th, 7th of May and for the Armed Forces Day on the 24th of June. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you, Mayor. Does the portfolio holder agree with me that the Dacorum Borough Council's justification to build on Greenbelt land for the local plan is now going to be used as evidence against them in the appeal for the Marshcroft development? Put simply, the council's own words will be used as evidence against them.
No, I don't, Mr. Mayor, because Regulation 18 consultations are not set in stone. And as has been explained on previous occasions, the administration used the Regulation 18 consultation period to demonstrate what the target house building figure would do to our local area and to gain the support of residents and gather the evidence we need to contest it. That's what the administration's done. We've made it clear that we're going to do another Regulation 18 and we will be using the guidance we've received from the government just before Christmas to significantly rein back on the amount of Greenbelt development because of that licence that's been given to the administration. I think it's because this administration challenged it and hung in there that we've managed to get a much bigger threat to, less of a threat to the Greenbelt in the local area. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Just for clarification, what you're saying there is that it is not policy of this council to allow a building, to approve a building on Greenbelt at this stage. Is that correct?
Sorry, can you repeat that, Mr. Mayor?
I was asking whether you were stating that it was not our policy to build on Greenbelt.
I would say it's the policy of this council to minimise the amount of Greenbelt development as much as we can, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Wood, did you have a supplementary?
Are you having your supplement?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, portfolio holder. Isn't it a fact that the King's Council for Marshcroft have got 22 witnesses and they're actually using quotes from the local plan to justify the use of Greenbelt land?
Councillor Wilkie, it's a draft local plan at this stage, I believe.
Yes.
Well, Chair,
Councillor.
all I'll say is that, of course, they're doing that. I'll refer the member to the answer I've already given.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Are there any other questions for Councillor Anderson? Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the portfolio holder explain why it is that he and the majority party unanimously refused to rewrite and reconsult when they had the opportunity to do so following my proposed motion of February 2021?
Councillor Anderson.
Sorry? Can I ask the member to repeat the question, please, Mr. Mayor, because I'm struggling to understand what it is we've refused to do.
Thank you. I'll use shorter sentences. Councillor Anderson, can you explain why you and your colleagues on the majority voted down a motion to do exactly what it is that you are now committed to do, namely to rewrite and reconsult on the local plan when such a motion was put to this council in front of many members of the public in February 2021? Thank you.
I don't accept that interpretation of what that debate was about, Mr. Mayor, for one moment. Really?
As a supplementary question, would Councillor Anderson agree?
Excuse me, could you wait to be invited to speak? Do you have a supplementary question?
Mr. Mayor, I have a supplementary question. May I put it?
Please do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could Councillor Anderson please refamiliarise himself with the minutes of February 2021, read them properly and report back on this at the next full council?
Councillor Anderson.
Mr. Mayor, I can look up the minutes of the debate and what the debate was about, but I don't think it would be very interesting to establish what the debate was about, because at no point has this administration refused to support anything that would materially reduce the amount of greenbelt development in a sustainable manner that would work. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Symington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Anderson, I wanted to pick up on your comments about the place strategies. I think it's excellent that Dacorum has funded some consultancy to bring forward the place strategies for Hemel, I think Hemel, Old Town, Berkhamsted and Tring. Could you... sorry? You can't hear me, sorry. I was just saying, I'm welcoming the place strategies, okay? Could you elaborate on what role you see them playing in the future development of Dacorum?
Councillor Anderson.
How long's a piece of string, Mr. Mayor? I think I'm a big supporter of the place strategy because it allows communities to actually look at their local areas and think outside the traditional bounds of discussions about planning and really look at what improvements can be made and trying to implement those changes. I know through discussions at Tring recently with the member with Councillor Symington that certainly the representatives in Tring are looking to take advantage of this new initiative to look at improvements that can be made there. So I think it is what the participants make of it. I think that's the glory of it. It is quite flexible, and it allows people to really, councillors in particular, to show leadership in terms of getting improvements for their communities.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Symington?
I do.
Just go ahead.
Someone has
Go.
to come off. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for that answer. In view of how important they are for this strategy, can the portfolio holder say whether he's prepared to commit some funds to help the individual communities bring forward and develop these strategies?
Councillor Anderson.
At the moment, I can't answer that particular question because we need to establish where these strategies are going, but certainly that's something we'll look at in the future going forward, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been brought to my attention that there is a consultation opened on the Levelling Up Bill. In fact, it's called the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill. Has this council prepared or made a response to it?
Councillor Anderson.
Yes, it is. Yes, it has, Mr. Mayor. I can't remember where we are in developing it, but what I can do is ensure that an email is sent to all members with an update on it.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Stevens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My supplementary, in fact, was, could it be circulated when it's sent?
Councillor Anderson. Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. Are you happy about that, Councillor Stevens? Good, thank you. Councillor Hollinghurst.
Thank you. I'm glad there's been some discussion about the place strategy. We have a draft local plan at the moment. It's not ratified. However, I must remind people, and I ask the portfolio holder for an explanation as to why, when we were in the process of submitting our plan 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, it was discovered that we had not adequately addressed our place strategies for Hemel Hempstead and Tring and other places. And that has put us in a very difficult position. Can he comment on how this omission arose those years ago?
I don't accept that there was an omission or that it was noticed 2 years ago as a result of following the process. In terms of following the process, I think what is particularly interesting is that a lot of criticism was made by members of the opposition when the Chiltern Beechwoods problem arose. But it was only by following the process, by going through the Regulation 18 that we did, that we were able to commission the footprint report that got us the information concerning the Chiltern Beechwoods, the issue, and how we were going to have to resolve it. So it was only by actually following that process that we were able to solve that problem. Had we chucked our heads in the sand, refused to have anything to do with the process, then potentially we risked a situation where we wouldn't have been able to prevent developers building wherever they liked, irrespective of problems like that.
I'm afraid that we've run out of time,
7
Councillor
minutes,
Hollis.
seconds, 6, 5. Thank you. Can I just ask, as a supplementary, did I ever mention the Beechwoods? I don't think so. Thanks for the answer, but it rather strayed off the point I was trying to make.
Thank you for that comment. We now turn to Councillor Elliott, Corporate Services. Portfolio holder.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
The Finance Service has continued to work on the 23-24 budget papers and council tax declaration. The formal approval of the 2023-24 budget and proposed council tax levels will be presented to council this evening and is the culmination of several months of hard work by the finance team in conjunction with the budget holders to ensure strategic and operational requirements are financially supported. Draft budget proposals were presented to Joint Overview Scrutiny and Committee again in February, incorporating the outcome of the final local government finance settlement and any material comments or feedback fed into the budget papers. The proposed budget details a balanced budget position of 23-24. The Finance Service has also been working very closely with the commercial project leads and our external commercial experts to develop the final business cases to shape the future commercial portfolio. As the Council has entered the final quarter of the financial year, the finance team is now beginning to focus on the closure of the Council's accounts for 22-23 and an agreed timetable for publication of the annual audited accounts. Moving on to our Revenue and Benefits team, they are continuing to work very effectively and are in the process of creating and posting out the 2023-24 annual council tax and business rates bills. Following the production of the Government's 23-24 business rates revaluation and the schedule of business rates relief, the billing process has been more complex than usual, but the service will continue to achieve the standard billing timetable. Although the Council is not the responsible body for setting these business rates relief, we are very much welcome the transitional relief on revaluations to support the local economy of Dacorum. The benefits team has been carrying out the annual uprating of benefit awards and working closely with housing colleagues to make sure that the new rates are included with information about rents from April. The legal team continues to support the core council service delivery and key corporate strategies to support the statutory and legislative frameworks in place. The legal service has been reviewing options for future service delivery and assessing options for shared service with neighbouring Hertfordshire authorities. The review forms part of the Council's commercial strategy and will be reported to members for review and discussion once the relevant options appraisal is complete. Election preparations are underway. All polling stations are booked and over 350 staff roles are currently being filled. Awareness for photo ID in polling stations has begun and the online voter authority certificate application website went live on the 16th of January for anyone who does not have photo ID. The notice of election will be published on the 21st of March and poll cards distributed on the 22nd. Please be aware that due to additional information required to be included on them to explain the voter ID requirements, the poll cards will be A4 and in an envelope that size when delivered. We're moving on to the People and Transformation team. They're making good progress. We have made successful appointments to two key leadership positions in the team, with Saj Chowdhury joining as Head of Transformation and Yvonne Salvin joining as Head of Digital. More widely, the HR team have been involved heavily supporting key senior appointments across the Council, particularly in housing. This recent recruitment success will be further enhanced by the launch of our new market forces policy, which has recently been approved, and the launch of our recruitment agency framework in March. In transformation, the new suite of KPIs have been approved. This forms a key element of our new performance management framework and ensuring we are an evidence-driven council. Our new complaints policy has also gone live and is already having a positive impact. The comms team have been busy supporting major pieces of work such as the garden waste programme and planning for 2023, and especially planning for the celebration of the King's coronation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Well timed. Questions for Councillor Elliott, Councillor Tyndall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was interested to find, sorry, that the polling card is going to be delivered in an envelope this year because of this unnecessary ID voter nonsense. Given the fact that an awful lot of people just put the polling card behind the mantelpiece and don't look at it again until just before the election, any messages inside the envelope may not be read until too late. Given the fact that it will take time for people to get a photocopy, photo ID if necessary, and I'm thinking of a lot of young people who may not drive or may not have got a passport, will the portfolio holder try to arrange that a message is put on the outside of the envelope in large letters to say that this election you will need ID, voter identification, thus bringing it to the attention of people the moment they pick up the envelope?
Councillor Elliott.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Tyndall. Clearly, I disagree with your view about voter ID, as I feel it enhances our democracy and it stops voter fraud. And that's basically the view of the opposition. There's lots of comms on the radio about voter ID. And if you have been out canvassing, as we all have been, I have really found not many people don't know about it. So, and also you're talking about young people. Well, they are basically quite savvy about being online, so they should be able to do this. And I think the size of the envelope for people that are used to getting a voting card that size, a polling card that size, it will alert them to the fact there is something that's different. So thank you.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Tyndall?
Yes, I wonder if perhaps Councillor Elliott could be less complacent about it, because the people who will suffer when their arguments breaking out in polling stations will be our staff who are manning the polling station. So please, I ask again, could consideration be given to marking the outsides of the envelope with the need for ID voter identification?
I will certainly have a look at it, Councillor Tyndall. Thank you.
Councillor Ansley.
To the portfolio holder, can I please ask, like everybody else within this chamber, I have areas under my remit that are deprived. People do not have access to a computer. What arrangements are made for those people who have neither a driving licence, a passport, are too young to have a transport pass? What arrangements are there that we are encouraging them to go through to get some ID, please?
Councillor Elliott.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Ransley. Most of our communities have community centres, and I'd advise people, if they do not have access to the internet, or they don't have a phone, or they don't have anybody that they know that's got access to the internet, or clearly they don't have a driving licence or a passport, they go to the community centre or phone the council. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor?
No. No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor England.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could the portfolio holder Sorry, could the withdrawal of the £230,000 annual AFM money for waste services for recycling have been avoided? Could the withdrawal of that money have been avoided if the portfolio holder had made a stronger case to HCC for what we were doing with that substantial sum of money?
Councillor Elliott.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. In England, no, because it's an HCC policy. You may know about it because you're a county councillor yourself. Thank you.
You have a supplementary?
If I may, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do know about it. I was in a meeting yesterday when we were told that none of the local authorities had made an argument why
Your
they needed the
question
money.
is?
My question is, in view of the plans Councillor Barrett needs to fund to avoid the embarrassment of Watford overtaking DBC on recycling, has the portfolio holder made any argument to HCC on behalf of DBC as to what innovations the AFM money could have been spent on?
Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, I think you probably asked the same question. Really, we've budgeted for this anyway because we were anticipating this not to happen anymore. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Barry Mears.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously very aware the voter ID is a national policy. However, on the same sort of point others have been making, especially if you think about young people, is there anything we can do as a council to maybe expand what can be used as an ID, such as if we think of young people, say 18, first time vote, they might be at college, might be in sixth form, and have an ID pass from there. They can't afford a driver's licence, it might not be something even on their mind, can't get a passport. Can we expand what's used as ID? Is that something we can do as a council?
Councillor Elliott.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor. Well, just contact the council. And also, you talk about young people, they're quite computer savvy, so they can get their voter ID online. They should have a national insurance number, and it's free. Thank you.
You have a supplementary, Councillor Barry Mears?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question would be to follow up. Does Councillor Elliott realise how entitled and out of touch he comes across? He doesn't seem to recognise the isolation in which some families live, where they have to limit the amount of data they use on mobile phones, which are shared between many. We're not talking about the children of people who might be councillors like ourselves, but we're talking about people who may be in the marginalised community who not only have the right to vote, but need to vote to have their voice heard. It is not acceptable just to say that generalise and make gross generalisations about young people. There are many different types of young people, many of whom have special needs, and we need to take a proactive response to encourage them to use their franchise. Does Councillor Elliott agree with that?
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle, for your statement. Clearly, we have, as I've mentioned before, we have community centres, we have libraries. People can go to those places to get voter ID through the use of the internet, and it's free there. So, thank you.
You have a supplementary, Councillor Hurling.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a supplementary, which is that I have concluded from that the answer is no, Councillor Elliott isn't going to take proactive steps to inform marginalised young people of their right to exercise their franchise. And I just wonder why that is.
I do take issue with the fact that you will be accusing me of not caring for the more vulnerable in society. The council has taken all the action it deems necessary through making the internet and other aspects available to the wider public. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott. I would remind people that there is a limit on the time that we can allocate to questions, and long speeches before you ask your question actually impinges upon your colleagues. Councillor Hollinghurst. Oh, sorry, it's Councillor Harden first. Beg your pardon.
Thank you. Just a clarification for the debate. Could the portfolio holder just confirm whose policy this is that's implemented for voter ID, because it feels from the opposition that Councillor Elliott has single-handedly created this policy. And also on the point of young people, having young people myself, I think they want to get ID as quick as they can so they can get to the pub. I know it's a wide generalisation, but all the young people I know seem to want to get photo ID so they can get to the pub. But if I get clarification from the portfolio holder as to who created this policy.
Thank you.
Councillor Hollinghurst, I must ask you not to make interventions without being asked to do so. Carry on.
I thought I was a ventriloquist there, but there we are. I'm sure there's some dummies in here as well. I do agree with Councillor Harden. This was a central government initiative and I fully support it. Again, voter ID, as I mentioned previously, there has been evidence of voter impersonation. And this is a way of ensuring that democracy, it's transparent in this country.
Thank you, Councillor.
Get him out.
Councillor, please.
Order. Point of order.
Order. Thank you. Order, please. If you insist upon intervening and shouting at this council, you will be removed. We now move on to Housing Services, Councillor Griffiths, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, can I start off by wishing you Happy Founders' Day? For those of you who don't realise, that's the Baden Powell's birthday. Years ago it was known as Thinking Day if you were in the Brownies or the Guides, but it's basically scouting. So Happy Founders' Day to everyone. Going on to my portfolio holder report, from property, the Housing Transformation Improvement Programme, the HTIP, is being relaunched via a webinar. We're increasing resources to respond to reports of damp and mould by around 200,000 for staffing and increased capacity for remedial repairs. There's increasing resources to improve aids and adaptations delivery, about 90,000 in staffing. Works have started on the new whole organisation asset management strategy. Works have started on the energy and environmental sustainable strategy for social housing. And the Greener Hearts Consortium bid Wave 2 funding is expected very, very soon. Under housing ops and the aspect of safer communities that falls within my remit, rent arrears as a percentage of the annual debt is at 4.27% compared with 4.23% at the same time last year. Court cost arrears continue to reduce and are now at 17.6%, down on the start of the financial year. Service charges upload onto Orchard Test and sense checked against historical errors and ready for the live upload this week. Under the former tenants' arrears, the Jacobs Enforcement Agency, we have 140 open cases with Jacobs, 11 on arrangement. The total outstanding balance is circa 217,000. Proactive engagement with former tenants directly with the service in several instances negated the need for Jacobs to open up case files and interventions. Housing Needs are proactively engaging with Hightown Housing Association and the Community Safety Team to address ongoing concerns at Peacock Court development, where several residents have requested urgent requests to move. A targeted plan is being developed to address the root cause. Housing Needs are liaising with Hightown Housing Association to relet the top floor of Lord Alexander House following the completion of the roof works. And these are also back to DBC for relets. They're out to advert at the moment. Altair are scoping works following receipt of the LGA Housing Advisory funding as part of the temporary accommodation review and aid development of a temporary accommodation strategy. The Community Alarm Monitoring Contract upgrade contract renewal documents to be reviewed by the Commissioning Board in March. And community alarm upgrades have started at Gravel Lane. Steady progress is being made with the estate inspection checks, over 30 checks completed each week for the last 2 weeks. Working closely with external agencies, and hosted over 60 sessions, events and activities in schemes, the communal lounges in the last 3 months. 14,005 tenants contact completed in the last 3 months, with 355 referrals forwarded to other agencies, including safeguarding, mental health support, referrals, etc. Proactive engagement with our Decorum outreach team has positively affected rough sleeping numbers, reducing the numbers to 3 compared to this time last year when it was 7. 5 warrants successfully executed in the relation to the housing standards casework and informants processes will be progressed based on the severity of the breach. Tall buildings work began, KD Tower, highest risk, an investigation due to start. Officer leading is making proposals for joint approach with building control and the fire authority. 26-room HMO application now in following investigation and enforcement action taken against the Decorum-based business. Under strategic housing and delivery, successful topping out ceremony held at Eastwick Row. All construction activities continue to progress well. Grant funding approved to Hightown for 66 books. Recruitment of the investment team completed, and new starters joining in the coming months. Recruitment of new heads of service has commenced. Paradise Depot tenders have been returned and will be adjudicated for returns. Awaiting release of planning approvals for Paradise Depot and Marchmont Fields post the moratorium, and submitting funding request to Homes England for these 2 schemes. The Bulbourne application will go to Development Committee in March. Inflationary costs on construction are starting to be realised. Plans in place to respond to the requirements of the tenant satisfaction measures, and the draft new housing strategy is in progress. Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor
Happy to take
Griffin.
questions.
Yes, quite a derby there. Councillor Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, can I invite the portfolio holder to have a drink of water? I think you were gunning for it at the end of that. At the beginning of the report, you were talking about service charges and the review, and the plans for the future. Obviously, in previous years, before we've had the cost of living that we've had at the moment, I've spoken with you directly about looking to put some form of cap onto annual rises in service charges. I'm wondering if that has been considered, and if the effect of the increase in service charges for all of our tenants have been considered from the tenant's point of view before they've been imposed.
Councillor Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do recall that was when we brought in the lift service charges, and in the case you raised with me at that time, that was really substantial because it was a very small complex. This is basically just the charges we charge on the service charge. There are no new service charges in this. This is basically making sure that service charges are in line with what effectively it's costing us to deliver that service. So whilst we have put in place a provision that any new service charge that's put in place is proportionate and not a massive, great big bill to our tenants, this isn't what that's referring to, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Freeman?
Not so much supplementary, but can I just ask for a little more clarification on proportionate? What I'm getting at is, will the council be managing some of those costs temporarily to minimise the impact to tenants when we can see there is clearly going to be an issue for the tenant to manage that?
That's certainly a supplementary. Councillor Griffith.
What I'll do is I'll get something to you outside the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Madden.
Thank you. About a month ago, I was contacted by a resident in Gade Tower, followed by an email from the head teacher at National School, concerned about the mental health and well-being of the families that live in Gade Tower who attend the school. This week, I visited 4 flats in Gade Tower and all the communal areas. To say it's in a shocking state would be the understatement of the year. I'm putting together a portfolio and I'm meeting council officers on site there tomorrow. But I just wondered, is Gade Tower the only building like this in Decorum? Is it really the only building that needs demolishing, or are there other council blocks that do as well, please?
Councillor Griffiths.
As the member will be aware, we have a whole, this words escape me. We're basically going into every house and checking I'm sorry, I really can't remember the wording I'm trying to remember. Stock condition survey, thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, so we're going in and doing a stock condition survey, which will be done on every property over a 5-year period. Obviously, we're aware of other properties that were higher up that list than you're doing sooner than others. And that will also feed into then whatever our strategic plans are going to be for any given area. So a lot of our EPDs, for instance, elderly person dwellings, perhaps are not fit for purpose anymore. So it might come with a regeneration plan. There might be other stuff we want to do. So I honestly can't hand on heart say that Gateshouse is the worst. I think it's highly likely. That's nothing I'm proud of, by the way. It's where we are. But there may be other pockets as well. Just being honest with you. But we are proactive on it, looking into it, and action will be taken on the information that we gather. Thank you.
Councillor Madden, do you have a supplementary?
Just to ask, when I finished putting my portfolio together, would the portfolio holder like to have a copy of it?
Most definitely, but I am aware that the officers are going out and are working with you on that as well.
Thank you. Thank you both. Councillor England.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In Spey recently, we were advised by officers that air quality is a particular risk for those living immediately adjacent to poor air quality, as the actual exposure is greater because of time spent. Does the portfolio holder agree with me that the suitability of temporary accommodation in DBC housing in Apsley, London Road, at the precise site of poor air quality, the poorest air quality in Dacorum, should be reviewed in the light of that evidence?
Councillor Griffiths.
No, I'm sorry, I can't agree with you as such. What are you suggesting? That we don't house them? We put them into bed and breakfast accommodation? Everybody lives in a home somewhere. So my colleague has already said about the action that's been taken with other agencies. And we are monitoring that aspect. But no, I would not make someone homeless and leave empty properties on the basis of possible air quality issues.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor England?
Yes, just on a point of clarification, I'm not talking about the area that's unsubstantiated. I'm talking about the area that we've had an air quality action plan in place since 2012. But at Spey recently, I and other colleagues and some of your colleagues were told that actually with air quality, it matters if you live next to it. And it occurred to me that there is some housing which is precisely adjacent to the worst air quality area in Dacorum. So I think maybe we should review that. I'm not suggesting we make them homeless, I'm suggesting we house them somewhere safer.
Thank you, Councillor England. As somebody who also lives in that sort of area, I'm interested in this question. Councillor Griffiths.
Sorry, so what the member is saying is we should use it for permanent accommodation as opposed to temporary accommodation, or we shouldn't use the accommodation at all. I'm not really clear what he's saying, which is why I'm saying what we're going to make them homeless or put them into bed and breakfast. We have a finite resource of housing, and I certainly, not on my watch, will we leave properties empty.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Councillor Diani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, as you mentioned that we, have added resources to solve lots of problems and stuff. How are we dealing with the backlog of mold? Could you tell us where is it deployed? Is it with Osborne? Thank you.
Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you. I did say in my report that we put in extra resources responding to damp and mould, about £200,000, both in staffing and increasing capacity and remedial repairs. There's a lot of work going on in that whole bit. Again, that we picked up with the stock condition survey, and every incident that's reported is investigated and action taken.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Diani?
Yes. So sorry, I understand that it's deployed to a few different areas. Is any of it being used towards, are we using Osborne service in any of these areas?
Councillor Griffiths?
We will be in some of it because some of it is repairing other work. So it's not just clearing the mould and damp does not necessarily solve the problem. There may be structural problems, there may be leaks, etc., etc. So in the round, yes, we will be using Osborne and other services as well.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Councillor Freedman, you've popped up again.
I did. I thought I'd. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought I'd be cheeky and ask a question that I'm not sure whether it's going to the housing portfolio or to the leader. It concerns housing, but it's in regards to the Solder Together scheme, which was launched at the end of last year. I was wondering if we had data on the take-up of that with our residents opting to use that to get their houses fitted with solar panels.
Thank you. Is it your portfolio, Councillor Griffiths?
It isn't, but I'm not sure if I need to declare an interest. I've applied for that scheme and I'm having the solar panels fitted in about the next 4 weeks. So I don't know if I'm in breach of anything by saying that or commenting on it, but I don't know what the take-up was, other than I did.
Thank you. I don't think that you have a
well, just that when the data is available, I would like to. I would like to know what the take-up is, and the follow-on is to see whether it's something that we would try to do again.
Thank you for that statement. I think that's we're timed out on Councillor Griffiths, so we shall now move on to Councillor Williams' commercial strategy and delivery portfolio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Elliott covered some of the commercial stuff in his report. I think I'm not quite sure how it slipped across to him, but he's covered that.
Well, let's hope that you don't have to cover the same ground.
In relation to the last question to my colleague on housing, in relation to the take-up of the solar panel scheme, I'm not quite sure which portfolio it fits in. I don't think it's housing. A report on the number of people who applied was given to us at one of the committees related to Hemel Development, but that doesn't necessarily work its way through to people who've taken up the scheme, as people who've made inquiries and got the prices. So there will be some lag until we realise how many people are actually going ahead and actually going ahead with installation and booking it once they found out through the scheme what it would cost them. So once those figures are available, as it doesn't seem to rest anybody else, I will take it on myself to ensure those figures are circulated. I'm sure members will be pleased, and particularly Councillor Symington, I suspect, when I say that I can confirm now that we have had confirmation that we have received our full grant application for the EV charger programme, and we are in the final stages of agreeing contracts with Connected Curb and through them Osprey. The grant is for £415,360, and it will cover 60% of the cost of installing 108 EV charge points in 18 car parks across the borough, and will be part of a £2.7 million investment by the two companies in providing EV chargers, which I'm sure will be pleasing to those who have been pushing for these for a while, and I know it's taken a while to get through. Also, over time, I'm sure will make a contribution towards air quality issues in the borough. Happy to take questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Symington, surprise.
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say thank you very much for moving this forward. And I suppose I can ask a question actually, but I'm very pleased that we have moved forward on this. I guess my question is, having got the money, when will they actually be installed and delivered? But really, I just wanted to say thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Briefly, Mr. Mayor, money comes through. I think the first 75% comes through as a first payment. The installation of chargers will be phased. Some of them, not all of them, but some of the bigger ones will require planning permission, and in the case of one of them, it requires a new substation. So again, planning consent will be required for that, so the installation will take a bit longer. But there will be a report to the next Finance and Resources Scrutiny Committee. I think the agenda is published next week, so you'll get to see more detail there.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I take it you have no supplementary, Councillor Symington. Thank you. Councillor Tindall.
Thank you. Given the published concern of a considerable number of councils across the country and the local government association at the cost of heating swimming pools and leisure centres. Have we had any involvement in appealing to the government alongside the LGA to actually see if there is any additional money coming to assist in keeping our swimming pools open?
Councillor Williams.
Don't know if that falls to me or not, but I can't say directly that we have, but I know we are engaged in discussions with our operator about costs, and obviously the cost of heating our swimming pools has been a significant additional cost to them. Whether they we have made a direct application to the government or contributed towards that, I don't know, but I will find out and get back.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Tyndall? Then Councillor Stevens. Then. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Have I missed you out, Councillor Elliott? I beg your pardon, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Elliott was first.
Yeah. Can I ask the portfolio holder to pass on my thanks for the gym refurbishment by Everything Active? It is a pristine facility and it is well used and has been well received by people using it.
Sorry, I was just surprised to hear that Councillor Elliott had been in the gym there.
Haven't you noticed how sylph-like he is?
Yeah. Yes, I'm more than happy to pass on his comments and to say to pass on to them how pleased people are with the work that's been done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I take it you have no supplementary, sir. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In fact, picking up on what previous comments about the heating of pools, etc., have we investigated alternative sources of heating for the pools? Because I know that there are other authorities which have commissioned alternative sources of heating to try and reduce the costs.
Councillor Williams.
I'm not sure about if we have in the immediate past or now investigated other forms of heating, but we have, when refurbishing equipment in pools in the past, investigated, and at that time certainly there wasn't equipment that was sufficiently manly enough, if you like, robust enough, strong enough to provide the sorts of heat output that you require to heat a swimming pool. So it wasn't possible in the past. Whether technology has moved on now, I don't know.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Stevens?
From the data that I've seen, it's probably well worth investigating again.
Thank you for that statement. Councillor Williams, do you wish to respond?
Well, I only say that I don't think we would replace equipment that's currently operational and working, but it was certainly something we'd look at any refurbishment in due course.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. If there are no other questions for Councillor Williams, I'll turn now to Neighbourhood Services. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Under waste services, contractors have commenced the refurbishment works at the food and garden waste bulking bays at Cupid Green. All of our frontline staff have received annual refresher training. Due to recent government legislation, we are now collecting persistent organic pollutants, known as POPs, separately from other bulk household items. Otherwise, we'll continue to maintain our exemplary status. Under environmental projects, we are creating a new recycling leaflet, which will be distributed to residents during the coming months. Vehicle artwork is also being changed to detailing recycling metal. Preparations are underway for the Great British Spring Clean, which is taking place between the 17th of March and the 2nd of April. And we've already organised 3 litter picking groups in Hemel, Tring and Berkhamsted. And we currently have a further 28 volunteers litter picking as part of their Duke of Edinburgh Award activities. We've commenced design of new signs for the Butterfly Bank at Warner's End. And we've carried out 2 school visits and presented a community talk to the Wigginton WI about recycling. Under trees and woodlands, We've received quotations for a new brushwood chipper, have been received, and the order is now being processed through Fleet Services. We're progressing discussions with the housing team around defining future policy about trees and communal areas and tenants' gardens. And we have installed new gates along Bunkers Lane within Bunkers Park. Under Clean Safe Green, the A41 litter clearance is scheduled to take place in early March. We currently are having a recruitment drive for several permanent roles together with numerous summer temps. We have agreed a maintenance contract for the Splash Park, and quotations have been received to replace the AstroTurf. And yearly refresh training has commenced for all personnel together with a number of job and equipment specific training courses. Under parks and open spaces, we have met with residents at Bennett's End and agreed to create a new wildflower area. Work on this will commence in early March. We refurbished benches in the walled garden and installed a new gate. And at the request of residents, we've provided three new benches and a picnic table at Canal Fields. We currently host weekly volunteer days at the Water Gardens, and we have taken on a new apprentice to work with the Parks team, initially in the Water Gardens area. That's all I have, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Freedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looks like I'm going for a frequent flyer today. Could the portfolio holder just give me a tiny bit of reassurance with regards to green bin collections that should be starting soon? I've signed on for collections as per a lot of people, but I've actually paid attention to the stickers and instructions that have come with those. Now, the instructions do say to place a sticker on the back of the bin and to have the back of the bin towards the road. This is not in any way an exhaustive survey, but on my walking round the black and blue bins in my ward, I've never seen them placed backwards to the road. Everywhere around always has the bins to the front. So can I just get some reassurance that, especially as the scheme takes off with green bins, officers will take will double check bins and not reject them if they're round the wrong way, especially as people are paying for this?
Thank you, Councillor Freedman. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Councillor Freedman. I'm quite confident that the operatives will, particularly as this is a new service being rolled out, will pay particular attention to which bins do and don't have stickers.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Freedman?
No, thanks. I'm happy with that answer.
Thank you. Councillor Barry-Mears.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Green bins again. I've been asked by a few residents if there's an update on the number of people that have signed up to green bin collections.
Thank you, Councillor Barry-Mears. I can confirm that as of today, 15,883 residents have signed up for the green waste prescriptions, which is a highly commendable number, and it's 105.82% of our projected target of 30%. So it's actually 32.1%, which clearly demonstrates the wisdom of implementing the chargeable waste service. Will currently bring additional income in excess of £700,000 to this council in this financial year. Thank you.
Councillor Griffiths, did you have a question that I've missed? Oh, okay. Councillor England.
Do I not get a supplementary?
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, Councillor Barry-Mears, I was distracted.
No, that's right, thank you. Sorry, you just said an extra income of £700,000 due to this. I was thinking about this the other day, and I've had a discussion with some residents as well, and obviously I don't understand the logistics, but so that's 15,000 households that have signed up to this across the quorum. I'm going to assume that's quite sporadic. Are we not going to maybe spend a bit more in fuel with these big bin lorries going here, there and everywhere because they're not doing just the roads they were doing? I know you're looking at me a bit confused, but this is the thought process of, are we now not going to be wasting fuel doing different rounds and going back? Doesn't seem logistically, seems like a nightmare.
No, I think we'll be using considerably less resource, less fuel, less vehicles, because we'll be collecting fewer green bins. Well, we'll only be collecting the green bins of the people that have signed up for the service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor England.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I have 1,000 litter bins, but only 650 of them have bags in them, would that be a good way to run the service? Or if I have 1,000 plates but only 650 sets of utensils, how many street champions should I invite for dinner at the Forum as a thank you?
Councillor Barrett.
You should invite all of the street champions to dinner at the Forum.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor England?
The portfolio holder didn't answer my first part of my question, which was if I have 1,000 litter bins but only 650 have bags in them.
Can't hear you.
Try again, please, Councillor England.
The portfolio holder didn't answer the first part of my question, which was if I have 1,000 litter bins but only 650 have bags in them, would that be a good way to run the service? I'm speaking normally and...
It's because you're holding your laptop over the microphone.
You've got your laptop over the microphone, I think.
I'm not,
Okay.
but I will carry on. Let's try it like that. Shall I go again? If I have 1,000 litter bins but only 650 have bags in them, would that be a good way to run the service? My supplementary is, what are we doing to respond to the levels of litter being collected, which seem to indicate where the litter bin coverage could make decorum tidier in all 25 wards, not just in the Marlows?
I'm sorry.
Councillor England, perhaps you could repeat your question, but sit down so that you can speak directly into the microphone. I'll allow you to do it that way. See if we can hear you better.
Thank you. My question, substantive question is, what are we doing to respond to the levels of litter being collected by street champions, which seem to indicate where litter bin coverage improvements could make decorum tidier in all 25 wards, not just in the Marlows?
Did you catch that, Councillor Barrett?
Still, I'm afraid not. Don't really understand the question, Councillor.
Listen, you guys never understand the question if you can't answer.
Well, you should ask a sensible question, then I'm sure I'd understand it.
Councillor, is this a point of order? Thank you.
Portfolio holders should be trying to answer and not responding with a rejoinder, which is not appropriate.
Yes, I concur with that. I think that we should try and keep politeness above all things during these meetings. If
I've called a cause of defence, I apologise. Sorry, Mr. Barrett.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor England, I have heard you in the past speak a lot more stentoriously, if I may say so. And I have to say that even when I allowed you to sit down, I was having difficulty in following you. I wonder if, were you saying you couldn't hear him, or you didn't agree with the question, Councillor Barrett?
Well, I couldn't really quite understand what question the councillor was asking. Maybe it was something to do with 1,000 bins and 600.
Councillor.
I believe the question was, if you've got 1,000 champions, but only 600 pits for them, what are you going to do with the other 400?
Is that correct, Councillor England?
Is that a question?
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, I think, sorry, Councillor, if you're saying that you're referring to the fact that we've got 1,000 registered street champions and and 663 have collected equipment, I think there are quite a number of people who have registered as street champions who haven't collected equipment but are active. And I know there are some of those sitting on this side of the chamber. With their own equipment.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. I think I've had enough of that one. Councillor Madden.
Thank you. In Nash Mills, in recent months, you've reported several times about the rewilding and all the fantastic work that's being done around the Dean's shops. So today, when I received an email from our parish clerk telling me that somebody was down at the Dean's today trying to dig up the newly planted rewilding area to sink a hole to decide whether it was suitable to put a new telephone mast and all the boxes that go with it. I just wondered if there's anything that we can do to stop them putting it on places that we've spent loads of money on.
Unfortunately, Councillor Madden, I don't think there is anything. I think the utility services have a statutory right to basically put their poles wherever they like.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor?
No, just a disappointment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pringle.
Thank you. Glad, I think you can hear me. Mine's short and sweet. I am one of the many who's got a green bin sticker. What's going to happen when the QR code gets covered in mud or torn or defaced or weathered? Will they still be usable?
Councillor Barrett.
I believe the stickers will be issued annually, and they certainly fit the purpose. They will certainly last a season. And my experience in Buckinghamshire with green stickers is certainly they do last a season.
Thank you. I'm afraid that's used up our time. I'm sorry to say, on Councillor Barrett. So we move on with the agenda. We now come to motions, and the first motion on the agenda is to be proposed by Councillor Anderson. Councillor Anderson, do you have a seconder for this motion?
Second, to reserve my right, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm at a little difficulty here because I've been alerted to the fact that an amendment may be proposed. I'm just going to move the main motion as on the paper and reserve my right to speak. As the mover of the main motion, one speaks last on amendments as well as the main motion, according to our constitution, and I see a nod to confirm that. So I'll reserve my right to speak at the end on the amendment, which I have to say I do not accept. But I'm moving the main motion, but I will not be accepting the amendment I've been alerted to.
More about moving it and introducing the motion first.
I think that you should at this stage introduce the motion at least.
I'm happy to introduce the main motion. Sorry, I was just advised that maybe for the sake of brevity that it might be worth leaving it. Mr. Mayor.
One moment, please. Councillor Tindlers is a point of order.
Yeah, Councillor Anderson does have a point. I believe that it's useful for the motion and the amendment to be proposed and seconded so that everybody is aware of what it is. And then it is up to yourself to actually conduct it in the order in which you want to be taken.
The mover has to pose the motion, and then it's open to somebody to propose an amendment.
Yeah. The point is, Councillor Tyndall, that any member can, as I understand it, can propose an amendment at any point. So, in the absence of any amendment being proposed, I have to ask Councillor Anderson to expand on the motion.
Yes, I think it's a bit chicken and egg situation, Mr.
Thank
Mayor,
you,
but
Councillor Anderson.
I'll crack on. See what I did there? Yes.
I'm getting rather scrambled on this whole matter.
Oh dear, it's getting worse, Mr. Mayor. Hopefully, the reason for the motion is clear. As important as food cost prices have been to the cost of living crisis, and also for those lucky enough to have mortgages, mortgage increases have been on the rise as well. I personally feel that the number one really big issue with the cost of living crisis has undoubtedly been the effect on retail energy prices, which have gone through the roof. Just to give some examples, I think for those who were facing increases in their average monthly bills of the order of about £6,700 a month, I think the government grant to every household in the country has been a real godsend and has really helped those people out. Albeit, when I talk about averages, it's normally double at this time of year because of the amount of money that's spent on heating. The issue, though, is for those people who have been faced with a £200 a month increase in their energy bills, which is an enormous increase. That's £133 a month over the grant from the government. It is a huge increase. I've been contacted by constituents, and this is an issue that affects everybody at every level. Those near the breadline, those well above the breadline. It has had a really huge impact. And in a way, the whole thing, whilst it might have been understandable at the start, for those of us who've been watching the wholesale gas, the spot prices, the future prices of wholesale gas, will have seen that the price collapsed almost immediately after the energy price guarantee was implemented. And they have not gone up since. They're on the floor. They're lower than they were before the cost of living crisis started. And then finally, in the recent weeks, we've received news of the energy giants making absolutely massive, staggeringly huge profits as a result of the high prices. Now, normally I would be really strongly opposed to the idea of raising taxes. My personal belief is that one should be minimising taxation. But I think when one's complaining about something, one has to explain where the money's going to come from. And I know that the profits will be sustaining investment funds and such as pensions, but the profits are so staggeringly huge. I personally feel enough is enough, and I do genuinely feel that the vast majority of people in this country are feeling the same. Now, there's two important aspects I omitted from the motion for the sake of brevity, which we'll understand with the second motion tonight, I think. But I think it is important to note that retail energy prices are used to calculate inflation. And it's therefore, if anybody's going to get a grip on inflation, it is particularly important that we keep retail price energies down as low as they possibly can be. And the other issue that was omitted from the motion was the fact that it is clear that high energy prices are stifling the economy, as identified by the IMF in their annual report recently. And if you want, and one other aspect, of course, is to look at the effect on businesses. The dreadful news today, I had the fortune some years ago to work for British Steel, Mr. Mayor. And the thought of British Steel having to close down the coke ovens at Scunthorpe Steelworks is totally unimaginable. And the sight of them having to propose doing that because they can't afford to pay for the energy is absolutely crazy. So the effect these prices are having on the economy are absolutely, it's people, it's businesses, and it's having such a massive effect. This is why I've proposed the motion tonight, and I hope members can support it so that we lobby the government to give our residents more support where appropriate, because I think it's important that we do that with an issue of this importance. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. So the motion before us is, as I understand it, the council therefore calls on the leader of the council to write to the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, Grant Shapps MP, to ask for his help. Yes? Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak to this motion?
Could I propose the amendment, please, Councillor Burney?
Councillor Tyndall.
Yeah.
Please do.
Do you want to take the fact it's got seconded before I speak?
Indeed. I assume you have a seconder.
Second the amendment. Reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Tyndall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I find this a tricky one to speak to because I more or less agreed with everything that Councillor Anderson said. and agree with the second half of the motion, which is calling for action. The problem is, there has been calls for action from the government for some considerable time in this direction, and the government has been resisting such action. And therefore, we've gone through a winter with raging high prices when the windfall tax could have been brought in at an earlier date. I think, therefore, we couldn't agree with the first half of the statement, which was a congratulatory message about the government and the fact that they seem to have been absolved of all responsibility. I only need to refer to the fact that last year we've had 4 chancellors, three prime ministers, a couple of other people and up a gum tree. So as far as I'm concerned, we would have preferred to have actually just agreed with the motion and the leader to write to the council. I would hope that this motion, our motion and our amendments, it has some chance of success, quite simply because it puts the blame and it sets out where we believe that the blame lies for this. But nevertheless, let's move on immediately to the second half of the motion. As I say, there's not much I could disagree with what Councillor Anderson said. And I would ask that everybody supports our amendment so that we can all then support the motion as amended.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Councillor Tyndall, thank you for that, but it is rather necessary to enlighten us about exactly the wording of your proposed amendment.
I'm sorry, I had thought that the motion was going to be displayed or circulated, because I did provide it earlier today. First of all, to delete all words in the first 2 paragraphs. Insert as the first paragraph, despite the government providing welcome support with energy bills during the cost of living crisis caused by COVID, international factors, including Brexit, made worse by the government's disastrous mini-budget in September 2022, energy bills have still risen by 80 to 100%. Wholesale energy prices have fallen away dramatically, and energy exploration and production profits have risen sharply. Still, the government ignores requests for increased windfall taxes. And then the remainder of the motion is, as Councillor Anderson has set out, the council supports the introduction of a tax, etc., etc.
Thank you, Councillor Tyndall. So we will now debate the amendment to the motion. Does anyone wish to speak to that?
Just to confirm, Mayor, that I'm not supporting, I'm opposed to the amendment, and I'm happy to speak last, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Anderson should go last.
Yes.
Councillor England, I think, should.
Councillor England, do you wish to speak in support of the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the amendment because I want to support what this motion is presumably intended to achieve, namely to ask the Secretary of State to help our residents in a relevant way, which is adapted to changing circumstances. And if only it had been done in autumn 2021 when the Lib Dems came up with the idea.
I have to congratulate you on the clarity of your diction there. I heard every word. Are there any other contributions? Sorry, Councillor Friedel, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like my colleagues, I'm definitely in favour of the action that this motion calls to. I am slightly uncomfortable with it seeming that the need for this is a passive side that's entirely down to external forces. I think that it's, and I would hope that if the motion passes in either its original or its amended form, hopefully the leader of the council may make reference to some of these points in his letter. But in particular, I believe that the state that we're in at the moment is clear evidence that the government's approach to the reviewing of the price cap over the last year has been flawed. There are a number of reasons for this. I won't get into the technicalities, but one of the key things is when energy companies came to the government asking for the cap to be reviewed, they pushed to keep the percentages of their revenue splits the same, rather than acknowledging that with the revenue in many cases doubling, that the amount they needed for profit and investment did not need to also double. It needed to maintain at the levels they had, and I can completely see that there was a review needed on the cap, but it was being done in a very oversimplified way, which has very much benefited the larger energy companies who have also been able to take a monopolisation of the market. And in my view, I think that asking for that process of how they review the cap to change is vital, because otherwise we're going to have the same problem the next time they ask for the cap to go up.
Thank you, Councillor Freedman. Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to speak in favour of the amendment. Our residents and our businesses really need the assistance and the help that the motion asks for, so it's important that it is passed. But the amendment is necessary because it is wrong, and I think many residents would find it somewhat insulting to congratulate a government which has brought such economic chaos through the events of recent years. We have had utter mishandling of the economy, which has cost so much that could have been spent on helping people who really need it. And we cannot forget that an ideologue was brought in temporarily and wrecked the economy. And that was on top of, yes, there were extraneous matters such as the international economic instability caused by the war in the Ukraine, but we can't keep pretending that the economic insecurity that has been caused by labour shortages and inflation due to Brexit, we can't keep not mentioning it. We have to acknowledge that. We cannot possibly congratulate the government, not because we don't need the help, but because I think it's offensive to quite a few of our struggling residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we make this work properly? I would like to say I support the amendment to the motion. I have to say that over the last 40 years, the party opposite has had a practice of privatising every single utility they could get hold of. That virtually every utility we have seen that has been privatised, they have promised us how this new model will work perfectly and deliver benefits to customers. We hear, but now we have a situation where the water industry is pouring sewage into our rivers. We have a railway system that has more or less collapsed. And we have an energy market which is driven by the highest prices. The cost of producing solar has not changed. The cost of producing nuclear power has not changed. Yet the customer isn't being made to pay for this. I therefore listened to Councillor Anderson with a degree of surprise, in that it is possible he has had a conversion comparable with St. Paul on the road to Damascus, and realising the errors of his way over these many years, and he will no longer be supporting the party he has been a member of. And that I welcome the sentiments of this motion, but not as it's originally drafted. It needs to be amended, and it needs to name the people who are responsible, namely the Conservative government. I'd like to thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. There seems to be no other people who wish to speak to the amendment. Councillor Anderson, do you wish to reply to the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'm afraid I'll have to agree to disagree with the supporters of the amendment. I know, and I think the majority of people will recognise that the government has been in quite an extraordinarily difficult situation in recent years. The COVID pandemic has put a massive strain on this country's resources. I think the government does deserve credit for the furlough scheme, because failing to have done that would have made things so much worse. And in my view, having just bankrupted the country, nearly bankrupted the country once, the last thing the government needed was something to come along where they'd have to do it a second time. They're in a difficult position. There's only so much money available. I think originally when this thing kicked off, when energy prices went through the roof in August and September, there were very real concerns of just how much the government could afford to support the public with the retail price of energy. It's only because the wholesale price has crashed that I think we're in the position we're in, where there is an opportunity, potentially, for the government to give our residents more support, whether that's with more in grants to households or driving down the price, whatever. But I do think this is the opportunity we have to lobby the government to get some more support for our residents. And no, I have not had a Damascus conversion. I can assure members I'm still Conservative to the core, because I keep trying to tell people I was born with a blue spoon in my mouth, having been born to two parents who were both Conservative councillors. I can assure you there is no danger of me converting, and it certainly would never be to the Liberal Democrats. So can I urge members to oppose the amendment? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, standing orders, if I may, you kindly reminded me earlier that someone could propose an amendment at any time during a motion. And I would ask that in order we can perhaps get unanimity in the council chamber on this, I would like to suggest that if we took the first two paragraphs out and just left the remainder of the motion, that gives the object of the motion without either criticising or praising the government. So if the mover of the motion would be prepared to accept the removal of the first two paragraphs, we can then all support the move. And I believe Councillor Mears is, Barry Mears is prepared to support the secondly.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Tyndall. I think that you should have actually made this suggestion while you were on your feet before. However, I shall ask
As a point of order, Mr. Mayor.
I shall ask Councillor Anderson if he is prepared to accept your suggestion. Councillor Anderson.
Mr. Mayor, as a point of order, before I answer that question, I would advise only dealing with one amendment at a time. I have seen meetings of this nature in the past descend into chaos because mayors have tried to deal with more than one amendment at a time. Can I suggest we deal with the amendment before us before we actually consider any more amendments? And I answer the question to your question, Mr. Mayor.
I understand where you're coming from. And in fact, there's nothing to stop another amendment being proposed at a later stage, I guess. So we will now move to a vote on the amendment. And I'm going to ask Leila to explain the voting system since there was some confusion in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I will shortly launch the vote onto the screen. You do have voting instructions in front of you. So if you could refer to those, but I'll just mention what's going to happen. As soon as the vote goes live on the screen, your glass display will change and it will display a green, red and an orangey yellow button. Green is for, red is against, and yellow is to abstain. You use that glass part of the screen to cast your vote. Once your vote is cast, the other two options that you haven't voted will turn grey. You can change your vote at any point until I close the vote, and I will tell you when I am going to close the vote. So if you could just give me a second to pop the vote on the screen, and then I can advise you when you are able to vote.
Thank you, Leila.
Has it changed? Hold on. Sorry, bear with. Jordan. My bit's right, the network isn't. It's doing couldn't. Do bear with us a second, sorry. Okay, so the vote's going to go on the screen. I'm going to close the vote now. Everyone has voted.
Could I now propose my amendment to Councillor Anderson, if he is prepared to accept it, about the removal of the first two paragraphs?
No, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Go to the vote. Yeah.
Especially after I've been criticising Councillor England all night.
Nobody else wants to speak.
Councillor Williams. Councillor Tyndall, do you wish to speak, or was that your intervention?
I don't want to waste anybody's time. If the administration is dead set against praising a dead government, we might as well carry on.
Thank you, Councillor Tyndall. So now, are there any other people who wish to speak to the original motion before I call Councillor Williams?
Sorry, point of order, are we not going to vote on the amendment? I recognise that.
No, I haven't proposed it. That's right.
Councillor England.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. How's the voice? Can you hear me? That's good. Okay. Apologies. It's disappointing that an amended or even a counter-amended motion could not be agreed on a subject like this. It's always good when we can come together. I think if it is to be more than warm, fuzzy words from somebody who used to work in the steel industry, the letter needs to be specific and transparently candid about all the obvious causes of our situation. It's not just COVID. It's not just the money spent on COVID. Frankly, governments are the only organisation that can spend money when they need to. Read some economics books from like the last 20 years maybe. In the spirit of getting things done and said by this august body, agreement means both sides ought to confront and accept that not everything can be attributed to our favourite factors, whether that be Margaret Thatcher or Tony Blair or the Coalition or Jeremy Corbyn or the 2008 financial crisis or Brexit or China or Russia or COVID or the climate change or the unions, the bosses or Boris Johnson or Liz Trussell-Down economics. I hope the letter will be specific about what we want Grant Shapps to do. Help for those facing economic disadvantage of being forced to use a prepayment meter and tariff. Recognition that energy companies did not expect these profits off the back of a war and tens of thousands of dead people and would not otherwise invest them in transition out of fossil fuels.
Thank you, Councillor England. As I have no other... Councillor Tyndall, is that... oh, he's gone. Is that... thank you. As there are no other... Councillor Dewars, just in time.
Well, good things are worth waiting for. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought that as a number of people have mentioned congratulations and congratulatory, it was worth looking and perhaps deconstructing the first two paragraphs so that we're actually quite clear what they're saying. The government's furlough scheme supported many businesses and individuals and saved the economy during the COVID crisis. Is that correct? Yes, it's correct. And the government has provided welcome support with energy bills during the cost of living crisis. Is that correct? Yes. However, energy bills have still risen by 80 to 100%, whilst wholesale energy prices have fallen away dramatically and energy exploration profits have risen sharply. Is that correct? Yes. Is that the basis for the second two paragraphs and the instruction within the motion to write to Grant Shapps? Yes. It is. So what's the problem with this particular motion? I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Dewars, for that bit of linguistic analysis.
Thank you.
Councillor Madden.
Thank you. When any of these motions come up, and obviously they do every month these days, I look around the fluffy bits and look at what
Just one moment, please, Councillor Madden. If you wish to have conversations at the back row, could you please try and keep them down so that we can hear the speakers? It's only fair to the other councillors. Councillor Madden.
Thank you. Yes, I ignore the fluffy bits and look at what we're actually trying to achieve here. And what we're trying to achieve is to get Grant Shapps to do something, and so I'm going to be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Madden. Councillor Pringle.
Well, I'm going to be publicly abstaining because we do need what the motion calls for, but we can't be forced to speak misleadingly in front of our residents. I come from a culture where we tell the truth, we tell the whole truth, and we tell nothing but the truth. And so in response to Councillor Douris's intervention, we need to talk about Brexit and we need to talk about the catastrophic mini-budget, selectively leaving out elements that we all know to be true. And I pause for, no, don't think the Conservatives are going to cheer that. But we all know that we predicted a cost of living crisis back in 2016. And we all know the incontrovertible impact that Brexit has had on the labour market, because we've heard our officers tell us the truth, the whole truth, time and time again at the scrutiny meetings. So I will not give my name to a half-truth, which could be misleading and also insulting to our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. So as there are no other offerings, I shall ask Councillor Williams, the seconder, to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having listened to that, I'm disappointed. We worded the motion carefully enough to recognise, as Councillor Douris so carefully pointed out, the support the government has given in the way of COVID and the support it's given with the cost of living crisis, both in terms of energy and the other areas. We didn't make it congratulatory. I don't think it congratulates the government. It's just recognising what the government's done and asking or saying effectively in this motion that they could do more, and we're asking them to do more. I instinctively, as Councillor Anderson said in the introduction, don't support excessive taxes on businesses. It drives, as we've seen with potentially with AstraZeneca, the investment into other countries. And if we go too heavy on the energy sector, we'll drive away investment and further production in things like North Sea oil, which we need. But there is an argument, given what we've seen in the last few weeks in the current profit round, to believe that there is excessive profits and the ability for the government to offset some of the costs to the public purse by having a further or more robust windfall tax on the energy firms and ask the government to look at that as part of what we have post-March. And also, because I'm not an expert on the energy market and lots of people have quoted different things here, understanding why, when wholesale prices are falling, as they rose rapidly when gas prices rose and our dependence on gas production of electricity particularly, why we don't have a corresponding falling off of it now. So looking at when the energy cap is reviewed, should that be reviewed down? Should we get some relief from the high prices we've seen? What I can assure you is that my letter to the Secretary of State won't mention Brexit.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. We will now move to the vote.
Councillor Anderson.
I just have. It has kind of been half pinched, but I just
We've
wanted
got a
to.
chance for another Damascene conversion, please.
No.
I'm advised.
No fear of that, Mr. Mayor. No, I just wanted once more to agree to disagree with the comments opposite, and also to stress that this has got absolutely nothing to do with Brexit whatsoever. And I think if one is going to accuse people you don't agree with as being offensive every time you speak, it will come back on you because it's saying more about you than the people you're trying to criticise. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I must say that I did think that some of the speeches did run a little close to the knuckle in regard to other people's behaviour. However, thank you for that intervention, and we will now move to the vote.
Okay, the vote is now open.
It's not quite right. I don't see a room for an abstention on my.
Sorry, I don't think abstention appeared. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, okay, bear with.
Well, it's not clear. I don't see much red on my screen either. There we go. There we go. Okay, may I suggest that you now start voting?
Yeah, I think so. I did.
You didn't press there. You pressed the motions.
Agreed anyway.
Are you ready to close the voting?
Yeah,
So, the motion has clearly been carried. There were 26 votes in favour, 1 vote against, and 19 abstentions. Thank you. So, hopefully with less heat and light, we will now move on to the second motion on the agenda this evening, which I believe is to be proposed by Councillor Wilkie. Councillor Wilkie,
Thank you, Mayor.
do you have a seconder for your motion?
I do. Councillor Barry Mears.
I second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilkie.
Female firefighters and police officers suffering sexist and misogynistic treatment. Dorset and Wiltshire Fire Service have launched an independent review and damning testimony shared with ITV News from female firefighters claiming sexist and misogynistic treatment within the organisation. This follows an investigation into South West Fire Service where comparable complaints were raised. A similar review was undertaken by the London Fire Brigade last year that revealed incidents of misogyny, racism and bullying in UK's largest firefighting service. Several female firefighters told ITV News of experiencing persistent sexual harassment, including one male firefighter demanding sexual favours at the scene of a fire. The women also revealed dozens of explicit photographs and unsolicited messages they had been sent by male colleagues, including demands for sex. The former Chief Crown Prosecutor for the North West, Nasira Afzal-Obi, has said this isn't a London problem, it's a nationwide problem, and I think we are seeing now is the fire service Me Too movement. There are parallel issues in the police force with an official report from His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary stating that detectives' vetting and leadership failures have allowed a, quote, prevalent culture of potentially thousands of officers who are, quote, predatory towards women to join and stay in the force. Officers carried out unwarranted stops on women in an abuse of power known as, quote, booty patrols, with crimes such as sexual assault and large-scale harassment of female officers and members of the public either ignored or covered up. Within this context, the Council unequivocally condemns any such behaviour in Hertfordshire Fire Service and Hertfordshire Police Service and will take the following actions. That the leader of the Council will write to the Chief Fire Officer for Hertfordshire Fire Service to support the actions being taken to ensure that if complaints of sexual harassment and misogynistic behaviour within the service are fully investigated and that any such complaint will immediately result in the suspension of that officer pending investigation. That the leader of the Council will write to the Police and Crime Commissioner to ask what steps he intends to take to ensure that female police officers are able to make complaints of sexual harassment and misogynistic behaviour and that any such complaint will immediately result in the suspension of that officer pending investigation. That DBC give clear and accessible routes for any female firefighters or police officers to make a complaint and to support and assist any female firefighters and police officers in the complaints process.
Thanks.
I reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Order, please. I've decided that we are going to have a 5-minute comfort break since we've spent quite a lot of time on the previous thing. So we are adjourning for 5 minutes only. We'll return at 20 minutes too. Thank you. You got the thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Thank you. Could we take our seats? I've lost my page. Oh, it's here, isn't it? Okay, I apologise for Councillor Wilkie for springing that upon you, but I did detect a few strained looks around the place. So now, are there? We've heard the motion, had the motion proposed. Does anyone wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Griffiths?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, I rise to disagree. I will be voting against the motion. And I will give my reasons. The main one being, it's come from the wrong council. This council is not responsible for the fire service. So by definition, we will have no form of input into their personnel records, who their staff are, or anything else like that. So I'm not quite sure how we could instruct our staff to do anything that's related to another organisation's staffing. It's a bit like someone said to me, that's a bit like asking Sainsbury's to implement a Tesco's policy. It can't be done. So I am never going to respond to agree to a policy or to a motion that this council cannot deliver on, because that would be deceitful. It's also, in my view, and I'm not a professional in this area, it's discriminatory. Why is it only talking about women? It could be men, it could be women, or it could be non-gender specific people. I don't see why it's women only. So again, I think it's a discriminatory policy, which again, I could not support this council supporting that motion. As far as I'm aware, all public service organisations have lots of policies against this sort of thing, whether it be anti-bullying, abuse. We've just had the one going through, which was, if you can say, Margaret, I don't know what's wrong with me tonight, I do apologise. But we have lots of policies, all organisations do, about this sort of thing. And I'm sure Herts County Council have the same. The other thing I would mention is the fact that whilst I understand writing to various organisations, because I have noticed over the 4 years, most of the motions coming to this council have been about writing to other organisations about different things. And whilst the leader of this council does obviously have power of the pen, I would also ask, how many times has the leader of the opposition been asked to write to these same bodies that adds to that? And what about the proposers of the motions? Have they all written letters as well? Because as we all know, 100, 200, 300, 1,000 letters or emails carry far more weight than one. So that also brings me to the point, this is the final council before Purdah. And this is the only motion the opposition can bring up. So does that mean that they are very happy with the way this administration has run this council, because there is no motion about what this council can take direct action on as a council, as opposed to the leader writing to someone? So there are, in very short points, why I cannot possibly agree to this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths, and thank you for your brevity. Councillor Pringle.
Thank you very much. I find that a very interesting contortion. They talk of angels dancing on the head of a pin, and I think we've just seen it. We've just had a motion proposed by the colleagues on the other side to write to Westminster. Well, guess what? That's another body. It's not like writing to Sainsbury's, writing to Tesco. Of course, we can write to the Police and Crime Commissioner. Of course, we can write to the council and the Hearts Council. Of course, we can write to the fire service. We can write these. And yes, we can do individually. A lot of us do write to our local representatives. But as a collective voice, as a council, united, we have an opportunity to say, it doesn't matter what colour of rosette you wear on the 4th of May, we will stand together against the endemic misogyny in our society. And to say that it is sexist is to deny that the misogyny exists. Sometimes the misogyny we see right before our own eyes. And there are some people who are deliberately misogynistic, but I have more faith in the opposite sex. There are many, many men who call out misogyny, who are allies of women who have been brutalised. There is also internalised misogyny, where women seek to deny it. And there is also unconscious bias, where people sit by silently while they see women being oppressed and bullied right in front of them, sometimes not even recognising the double standards that they espouse. And so I congratulate Councillor Wilkie for putting this motion before the Chamber, because the more we talk about this, the better. We cannot ignore the fact that 4 women every single week in this country are murdered. Not men, women. That is not sexist, that is criminal, and it is a fact. And the fact that I see men and hear them now muttering while I'm trying to shine a light on that is something I find very offensive. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that in this chamber for fear of offending the people who are talking over me while I'm talking about 4 women per week being murdered. But it seems some people want to silence me, and I will not be silenced on this because I work with it. I see the scars, I see the razor blades where people have carved their names into women's legs. I've seen the psychological abuse, the gaslighting, the wish to restrain women. And I've also seen the double standards applied to women who stand up and speak truth to power, where, for example, in some countries it is still part of the law, it's very much part of the culture in this country when we have legal proceedings where women are giving testimony about how they've been abused, where they are simply not believed. Many people believe, still unconsciously, that a woman's word requires corroboration, that a woman cannot be believed at her word, whereas a man can. And that is something we see all around us. We are immersed in it, and I will never stop saying it. And if for political reasons another woman in this chamber wants to deny that 4 women a week are being killed, or thinks that we should be speaking about men also...
Point of order, Mr Mayor. I did not deny anything of the sort. You could only be referring to me because I'm the only one who's spoken on the motion. I want that withdrawn, Mr Mayor.
I misspoke and I apologise. I didn't mean to say that. Wants to deny that we are immersed in misogyny and deny that the female sex is the sex which is being killed. And we all need to speak about that in a united way. I've received misogynistic abuse from people in this chamber. When I've been speaking, I've been told, sit down, woman. Now that's happened. And I also heard earlier when my colleague Councillor Madden was speaking, that people were just muttering over her. Doesn't seem to happen so much when men are on their feet. Now I think we should all take stock, have a think about this, and think hard about what Councillor Wilkie has brought to our attention.
Thank you, Councillor Ringo. I think it would be very difficult for somebody to speak over you. But I take your point about people muttering.
That's why I do the job, I do.
I take your point about people muttering in the background. I've already made that point to them. The next person that we have is Councillor Beecham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support all actions taken against individuals engaging in sexist and misogynist behaviour. However, I will not be supporting this motion. The implication that Hertfordshire firefighters and police officers, both of which who have stations in my ward, are engaging in such abhorrent behaviour without any evidence to support such a motion without any evidence, I find these implications both offensive and disingenuous to the fantastic work that these officers in our borough do. So I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Beecham. Councillor Tyndall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to correct a few things, as the chair, correct a few points, particularly as the chair of the Decorum Domestic Abuse Committee, and also as an ex-trustee of the Hertfordshire Domestic Abuse Helpline for 10 years. I feel that I need to explain to everybody what 4 means. And I'm very grateful to the council or staff for actually putting this little booklet round. I had no knowledge this was actually turning up, but in actual fact, it is a explanation of the council's community safety services. And it includes where, how, and the borough supports vulnerable people who need help. Now, if you read the actual motion carefully, that DBC give clear and accessible routes. We're not saying they're our staff, we're not saying they're anybody else's staff. Accessible routes for any female firefighter or police officer to make a complaint. That is, if they feel vulnerable, if they feel that somewhere in their workplace they are receiving abuse or intimidation, then they know they can come to our community safety department and be helped. We have outreach workers. I know, I work with them. We have domestic abuse support workers. I know, I work with them. So this is actually part of the job that the council does. And it's a very valuable part, but I would suggest that the rest of the motion is read properly and those recommendations are read. The other point is that you will note that we are dealing with the fire service differently from the police. I do not know what is going on in the police and what the Police and Crime Commissioner is doing about the situation. I do know, having been to a briefing with the Chief Fire Officer, that the Chief Fire Officer takes this very seriously, is actively making sure that there is going to be a no sort of further instances, if any exist, on his watch. And that is why it actually says to support the actions being taken by the Chief Fire Officer Council, whereas we are asking the Police Commissioner to actually find out what he's doing. So it actually is very carefully written to address the points. We must accept that there are some men who are still living as if they were in the Dark Ages. Well, I'm sorry, you can't just grab a woman by the hair, put your club over your shoulder and drag her off to the nearest cave. There are actually laws in this country now that everybody should be treated equal, and this is part of that process. I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Tyndall. Councillor Madden.
Thank you. Just to clarify, when I spoke earlier on and I did hear that there were people in the background, I certainly wasn't offended by that. I certainly didn't see that it was a misogynistic act. I thought that people were perhaps interested in what I was saying and commenting to the person next to them, either in agreement or in disagreement. I certainly didn't see anything other than that. But I'm going to be abstaining on this motion because whilst I absolutely understand the sentiment behind it, as a county councillor, I also do take Margaret's point that this is a county council issue rather than a quorum council issue. I don't want to vote against it, but I can't see that I can vote for it. Points 4 and 5, I can't see how DBC can give clear and accessible routes for any female firefighters or support and assist any female firefighters and police officers in their complaint process when they would be going through the county council or the police force rather than the Decorum Borough Council in order to do that. So I just wanted to explain why I'll be abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Madden. Councillor England.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a borough, so very similar to a district, but we have a mayor, we have a community, we are a community. We can speak for our community. Councillor Anderson wants to speak for our community. So do we want to have a community voice for our affected female residents, or do we want to stand on the sidelines? This behaviour has recently been reported as happening against women in the fire service. We cannot say it is not happening in decorum. I repeat, we cannot say it is not happening in decorum. I'm not accusing anyone, I'm just pointing out that we cannot say that we don't have a problem here. The whole of our society cannot say that we don't have a problem here. That's why Councillor Wilkie has brought it to this forum, so that we can talk about it on behalf of the residents that we represent. I think it's right that we have this public conversation in decorum. I ask you the question, do we unequivocally condemn any such behaviour in Hertfordshire Fire Service and Hertfordshire Police Service? Do we want to take the following actions? Leader of the Council to write to the Chief Fire Officer. Leader of the Council write to the Police and Crime Commissioner. Should we give clear and accessible routes for any female firefighters or police officers to make a complaint? Should we support and assist any female firefighters and police officers in their complaint process? We have a voice, as these are residents of decorum as well as of Hertfordshire. So the question that Councillor Douris asked you in relation to the previous question, I'm asking you now. Do you agree what's in this motion? Then vote for it.
Thank you, Councillor England. Councillor Barry Mears.
Thank you. I'm shocked, actually. Really, really shocked to hear some of the arguments against simply supporting victims and making sure people can stand up for themselves. I'm shocked at watching some of the responses around the room, the faces being pulled. Yeah, that face. I think it's pretty disgusting and it underlines misogyny. It's very obvious, and I know you're laughing at it, you think it's hilarious, but it's not. This is very real, it's very internalised. We might not realise it's happening, but by saying, oh no, we can't ask you to write to somebody, what power does he have? Well, why did you bother with your last motion? Do we not realise what that sounds like? That's Westminster, this is Hertfordshire. Is Hertfordshire not closer to home? Are Hertfordshire residents that might work for these services that every day are probably, there's people being sexually abused, sexually assaulted. It says women because there's your figures, it's mainly women. It's terrifying, and if you don't feel scared of it, when I think again it shows you're only passionate about things that affect you. Just because it might not affect you directly doesn't mean that you shouldn't stand up for the people that have elected you. And hopefully they'll vote not for you if you can't even stand up for them. It's disgusting. I'm genuinely disgusted. And to say there's no evidence of it happening within Hertfordshire, oh, well, there's no evidence of voter fraud, but we're happy to go, oh, there's voter fraud. So maybe we need to have a think. Who do we trust? Not our voters, clearly, but we trust our men. And I'm really happy that you can trust our men so freely, but not everyone can, and not everyone's safe from them. So it's, like I said, I'm disgusted, and I think a lot of people are here. It's really scary, and I hope there aren't women that look to some of you men in here for support and for protection if you're going to vote against this. Thanks.
Councillor Imamli.
Turn my microphone off. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it brief. I think when we get motions like this that come to the council, we really have to be thinking about our community as well as our powers. And I do think it's a key and very often not spoken about topic that we all need to take seriously. I'm chair of the Housing OSC, And we have recently had a very long and robust discussion about this council's approach to domestic abuse. And that included people from all sides of the political sphere. We all left our rosettes at home and we focused on the community and brought our expertise and experience in, and I believe came up with some very good ideas and worked very closely with officers to ensure that people that we're responsible for are kept safe. And so I know that I'm definitely somebody in this chamber that nobody can accuse of being party political on such an important item or not caring. However, points 4 and 5, unfortunately, I do not think have been well thought out or written, because DBC to give clear and accessible routes to any female firefighters or police officers, and they don't work for us and we don't manage their complaints procedure. So I really want to understand what it was that Councillor Wilkie intended when she wrote those letters, because it almost feels as though part of the sentence is missing, and it makes it very difficult for us to support her. But I do want to just crush any misinformation or attacks on people not taking this seriously, because you can read the minutes from, I think, the Housing OSC 2 months ago and realise that everybody took it seriously and it was not a politicised item, and that we 100% do care and want to work together to do what's right for vulnerable people in our committee, and will do so at any opportunity. But policies and intentions have to be written correctly so that we know that when we vote for something, we can fully implement it and be behind it, and not be in a position where people come back to us a year later and say, you said publicly you were going to do this and you haven't done it. And we say, well, we voted on it knowing that we could never implement it anyway. That makes a mockery of why we are here.
Thank you, Councillor Mani. Councillor Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've said similar things to what I'm about to say on this motion to other motions before, but I think it's a bit serious, a bit more serious and more pronounced on this particular one. The council is an authority, it has a voice. A lot of people look to the council and councillors as leaders. So therefore, what we say when we make statements about behaviour matters. It resonates and some people will pay attention to it. Whenever I look or I consider some of the challenges of those marginalised in society, I think to myself that I personally am very privileged. I have never experienced misogyny because I'm not a woman. That doesn't mean that I can't use my voice against it. And in fact, most of the time when I talk to people and say, how can I help these minorities? It's, well, use your voice for it. Well, I'm very happy to use my voice against it. I would therefore like any tools that we have, which includes the council voice, to be speaking out against it as well. Within the background of this motion, we've mentioned a number of the high-profile cases that have come to light. And these are obviously absolutely abhorrent. But there is an issue that there is a pervading, there's a pervading culture or subculture in some of these areas where these behaviours are acceptable. Any actions that, and statements that the council makes helps push that, that message to these subcultures that this behaviour is not acceptable. Small microaggressions, small behaviours of treating women differently, of victimising women, or marginalising them in any way needs to be pushed back. I acknowledge what some members on the other side of the floor are saying about worries of where DBC's responsibilities end, but we also have to remember that anybody going through this treatment, anybody that is making a complaint, there is more to what is happening in their lives than making that complaint. For example, some of these, there may be one of our council housing tenants may be currently going through difficulties with her employment because of a complaint process. DBC officers working with her, whether those are housing officers or whether those are support officers, should be aware of that and therefore should have tools to be able to factor that in to the way that they are dealing with that person. So I do not accept that DBC has got nothing to contribute to this simply because the complaints process and the people hearing that complaint will not be within DBC's remit. What we can do is help people to know where to look for that complaint and to ensure that, that the fact that they are making a complaint is part of our holistic view of that person's situation. So again, we have a voice. People do look to us for leadership. Like my colleague said about having a public debate on it, which is what we're doing. I think it's very right that we are having it, and I think that it's also very right that we have a strong voice of condemnation.
Thank you, Councillor Friedman. Councillor Wilkie, do you wish to sum up?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to say that at least we have opened a dialogue. There's a great axiom that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men and women to do nothing. We can't play the game of hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil here. These women that work in the fire service, that work in the police service, are our residents. We, us collectively, must be their voice. We already have the infrastructure. It's here in your own guide. All I'm suggesting in the motion is that we broaden that guide and give the tools to the people that are already the experts in the community that are meeting these people and say to them, be aware of this. I know that all around these chambers, councillors, irrespective of their political stripes, as my colleague said there, were all equally as appalled and stricken as I was by these reports. I hope all of you took the time to look at the links and see the interviews of these victims. It was beyond shocking. I met with a number of retired and serving officers over the last few days, and they feel genuinely aggrieved that their reputations are sullied by these individuals. They don't want to pretend it's not happening. They want us to bring a call of arms. I do believe that the larger proportion of those that work in the services are deeply committed to serving their community. But this old trope that, oh, it's just a few bad apples, it can't possibly be happening in Hertfordshire. Are we still there? Excuse me. Are we still there after all that we've seen of late? Are we still going to use the same old tired tropes? It can't be happening here. It must be happening there. You have your evidence. Somebody said earlier, what evidence do we have? Well, the former Chief Crown Prosecutor said this is a, quote, nationwide problem. His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary said that it was prevalent, a culture of predators. It would be naive at best to say it wasn't at Hertfordshire, but I think it would be so egregious to the victims of this in Hertfordshire for us to say, we don't see you, so it can't be happening. I was pleased to see this booklet. I took it to indicate that my colleagues across the floor, and you know I work with all of you where I possibly can, that you recognised that the infrastructure is there. for us to help. And my colleague, Councillor Tyndall, has already mentioned how we make clear and accessible routes. I have residents come to me with problems that would not fall under the job description for a councillor. I know all of you do too. They come to us because they have nowhere else to go. We're their last resort. And I do not believe that there aren't officers, female fire officers, female police officers that are in our residence that don't want to come and speak to us. And this will be a call of arms. This will us be saying very clearly, we do see you. We want to hear you. So I am asking you, please, to support my motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. We'll now move to the vote. Oh, it's there in front of you. Are we ready to close the vote?
4 people haven't, one more, 3 more people waiting to vote. Check your screens.
Well, I make it 42.
We should have 45.
Oh, right.
Is anyone having any issues with their voting screen?
It can't change. It can't change. So you can.
Yeah, as long as it's not been pressed, then that shouldn't be voted. One more person.
Okay. They voted 13 for the motion, 21 against with 10 abstentions, so I'm afraid that motion falls. We now move on to agenda item 6. Business from the last council. Is there any outstanding business from the last council? I don't know who I'm supposed to ask.
No.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether it's the CEO or the leader of the council, but apparently there's not. Okay. Cabinet referrals. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I refer to page 20 of the agenda, Cabinet referrals from the 24th of January 2023, 71CO823 committee timetable.
Seconded.
Moving then to the next page, 72 CA09 of 23, Treasury Management with a resolve to recommend.
Seconded.
Moving then to the meeting of the 14th of February, 73 CA1823, Q3 Financial Monitoring Report with results to recommend under 2 and 3.
Seconded.
Moving then to item 74 CA2023, the Budget Report, and I refer to Councillor Elliott to move this item.
Thank you. When I stood in the chamber 12 months ago to recommend my last budget to the council, the country was starting the long recovery from the impacts of the pandemic, and at that time was unknowingly entering a period of significant geopolitical and economic uncertainty. 12 months on, the council still has many challenges, but we are in a much improved position, with services back in full operation and the local economy able to fully trade, and we are confident we can continue on the path of full economic recovery in the medium term. The economic and financial challenges previously brought about by COVID were significant, but the Council undertook a proactive and structured response to the pandemic. The creation of the Economic Recovery Reserve to support those services most impacted by the economic downturn, and the combination of the Council's proactive approach to securing additional funding support has meant that the 2023 budget shows reserves increasing again and a medium-term strategy to get back to pre-COVID reserve levels is in operation. Within this challenging environment, Dacorum Borough Council has played a key role in the COVID response, extending help and support to our businesses and communities at a time they needed it most. I am particularly proud that in continuing to provide our day-to-day services, the Council has been a visible beacon of stability amid so much financial uncertainty. I have no doubt that this consistency and reliability has been reassuring for many residents across Dacorum, but in particular for the most vulnerable within our community. Support for business. Since March last year, the Council has implemented the post-COVID business relief schemes and the final business grant schemes on behalf of central government. The need to make payments to struggling businesses as quickly as possible has meant that schemes that would ordinarily be designed over a number of months or years have been instead rolled out within a matter of weeks. During 22-23, we have awarded £7.8 million worth of rate relief under those schemes to over 850 local businesses. It is a tribute to Council staff, particularly those within the Revenue and Benefits team and the Economic Development team, that they have stayed on top of constantly evolving government guidance to support local businesses. A key enabler of this has been the development of the Economic Recovery Board and the bringing together of major businesses, stakeholders and the Council to drive forward the key requirements to support business growth. In addition to this, the Council has worked closely with its commercial tenants throughout last year to ensure it does all it can to support them through the pandemic, which has resulted in occupancy levels remaining incredibly high at around 95%. The next stage of the recovery phase is now critical. The Council will continue to work closely with its public and private sector partners over the coming months to ensure we do as much as possible to help the local economy in what are very testing times with the ongoing cost of living pressures felt by businesses and residents. Putting the budget into context here, over the last 10 years, the Council has successfully risen to the challenge of saving over £8 million while simultaneously protecting and improving the frontline services that we provide to our residents. This budget outlines plans to achieve a further £2 million through efficiencies and income generation in 23-24. The medium-term future of local authority finance will remain uncertain until the end of the current Parliament, when it is expected that the next government will undertake a local government finance review. The next 2 years, funding appears more certain than in previous budget cycles. This is why the Council has proposed a budget for 2023 with a strong focus on sustainability and continuing to deliver its corporate priorities into the medium term. We have already made significant strides towards balancing the budget in future years, having identified initiatives of over £900,000 to address our medium-term financial strategy savings targets up to 2027. But we continue to invest in the borough. Despite the extent of the financial challenges we are facing, The Council's history of prudent financial management means that we are in a position to propose a highly ambitious capital investment programme in excess of £330 million over the next 5 years to further enhance the services we provide to our residents and the environment in which they live. Some of the areas identified for capital investment include £120 million worth of investment in our existing housing stock, which continues to provide high-quality homes for tens of thousands of people across our borough. £146 million investment in our ambitious and successful housing new build programme, helping more people to live affordably in an area which has some of the highest house prices in the country. £41 million investment in various ventures which combine social benefit with financial return, including significant investment in leisure services and facilities in neighbourhood areas. £4 million worth of investment in supporting the local community sector to develop their community services, including the support to dens and the ongoing development and enhancements of adventure playgrounds. £8.7 million worth continued ongoing investment in the Council's vehicle fleet, driving the desire for greener vehicles to support the delivery of our frontline services. Now, moving on to council tax. As part of the budget for 23-24, the Council is proposing an increase council tax by 2.9%, or £6.27 per annum for a Band D property. This equates to 12 pence per week. Central government is likely to consider each council's ability to raise tax when deciding how much funding it will provide in the future. Really, in simple terms, government is likely to reduce future funding by an amount that it expects the council to raise through increasing its council tax. Proposing this increase in line with government expectation means that we have done all we can to protect Decorum's overall funding position for future years. Moving on to something that's very dear to everybody's heart is housing. In line with government guidance, the Council is proposing an increase in housing rents by the new housing rent cap of 7%. This new government policy cap is over 4% lower than the previous CPI plus 1% option. So rent increases are below current inflationary levels following historic rent reductions. The average rent for a council property next year will be £118.62 per week, which, following, despite the recent period of enforced rent reductions and below inflation rent proposals for 23-24, the Council has continued to make housing delivery one of its key priorities, and the Council recently completed its 356th new home. This trend will continue. The Council has a further 153 new build homes on site at present, with a further 145 in pre-planning stages. We are also investing in the infrastructure that will enable us to deliver our housing obligations to the most vulnerable in our community in the best way possible. The Council has been awarded several Homes England grants to support the new social house build programme. In total, the Council has achieved match funding grants from Homes England of £9 million to support the delivery of 101 new homes. In 2022, the Council completed the delivery of its first 8 purpose-built follow-on accommodation units to provide additional support for the homeless or those at risk of homelessness. So you'll be pleased to know, in conclusion, unquestionably, the the Council faces significant financial challenges in the years ahead as we play our role in supporting residents and businesses in a tough economic environment. However, this Council can enter this period feeling confident that with the commitment of the members and staff, we will continue to deliver for our residents. And personally, I would like to thank the finance team for their support over the past 12 months, and I look forward to working with them over the next year. I recommend this budget to full council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, can I formally,
Councillor Elliott.
Mr Mayor, can I formally second and reserve my rights?
They haven't had any questions yet, but I'll hear what you say. Councillor Tyndall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, at the very least, I agree with Councillor Elliott. It's been very testing times in the past year, as the debate earlier on motion 1 alluded to. It's also been testing times for local authorities, primarily because of the way in which the government has played around with the funding of local authorities again. Despite the urging of the Local Government Association, we ended up with a 1-year settlement and last-minute notification of funding. Now, this again has put additional strain on staff and is not the best way to run any organisation, being based on last-minute notifications. I also believe that we're not likely to get the public health part of the funding. I know we're not involved in that, but that might not come through for another month or so. And so the staff that are dealing with public health won't know whether or not they're going to get the money to carry on in April. But that's a side point. The way in which there should be at least 3 or 5 year settlements so that local authorities can plan, can actually organise their finances to the best degree possible. And really, there definitely needs a change at the top. However, the failure of the government to move away from its appalling management of funding has actually resulted in windfalls for decorum, which we welcome and has helped our way ahead. I would like to pay special tribute to the officers of the council because they've done a sterling job right through. We've had the cost of living crisis where they were heavily involved in, and in actual fact it's for the reason of not putting additional strains on the council that this year we didn't produce a separate budget. In the coming months, we will be giving voice to financial aspects of the council and possibly different ways of doing things, but on this occasion we will be abstaining so that we can get on with the job of looking towards the future.
Thank you, Councillor Tyndall. Councillor England.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, we live in a country where tomatoes are being rationed right now because we have quote-unquote sovereignty, but we lack resilient supply chain and backup. The government settlement doesn't need to be, but tomatoes and lettuce are inevitably just in time. And these are being rationed by both Sainsbury and Tesco because the backup supply is from Morocco. But Morocco has a deal with the EU, which we used to be part of. Bacon, lettuce and tomato. This year it's the BLT budget. Brexit, long COVID, Trussonomics, with a side order of government windfall going into the reserves.
Councillor Williams.
It really fascinates me, the obsession with Brexit that some of the members opposite have. And we know that the tomato issues related to poor harvest in Spain and floods in Morocco. I don't accept for a moment that you can blame the whole thing on Brexit. But I know they take great joy in blaming everything on Brexit. I think Councillor Elliott has laid out the budget very well, and I accept one of the points that was made by Councillor Tyndall in that I attended a meeting along with the Chief Executive in London today of ELGA, which was addressed by a minister from Dulac, whatever you want to call it. And one of the themes of that was the council's general frustration, not ours, but across the east of England, with the short-term funding pots that the government comes up with, and a requirement and a commitment to a longer, more stable funding mechanism rather than bidding into short-term pots where we're competing against each other. So I recognise that criticism. Beyond that, I think Councillor Elliott has outlined what a significant budget this is for this council, balanced, protecting frontline services, and I note that the members opposite, are not really engage in that, apart from that strange contribution from Councillor England, and are going to refrain from voting for setting a legal budget for this council. So really abdicating their duty as councillors to support sound finances for this budget. Just thankful they won't get their hands on the levers of financial control.
We shall now move to a vote, as is required. Can we close it? And everyone has voted. The motion, the budget has been approved by 28 votes with 16 abstentions and no one voting against. Thank you. We now come to an item 7.5 of the Cabinet referrals. Councillor Williams, would you like?
I think, point of order, Mr. Mayor, I need to introduce it, speak to it, and then, as with all motions, referrals to Cabinet, members are free to ask, not to ask questions, to have a debate.
Councillor Tyndall, you only needed to intervene and we would have moved it into it. Councillor Williams.
Well done, Councillor Tyndall. He knows, because I've shared with him before the start of the meeting, that I'm making an amendment to this. I'll give him a copy of it. He knows it's going to take me a couple of minutes to introduce it, so he was very quick off the mark. Right. Referral 7.5, CA 24/23, release of community infrastructure, levy core funds, with a resolve to recommend under 1 and 2. And then I move to recommendation 3, which is shown as a Cabinet agreed. With the resolve to recommend under 2, which would change the terms of reference so that these future decisions on the spending of core, of this section of core seal that was released would be a Cabinet decision. At the point when the Cabinet debated this, of course, it wasn't a Cabinet decision because it requires an agreement to recommendation 2. Therefore, recommendation 3, which is not clear, to clarify the Cabinet's resolution, is that to make recommendation 3 a resolve to recommend, and to clarify the Cabinet recommendation is to support one of the recommendations from the Infrastructure Advisory Group in relation to releasing £600,000 for playground, one of the package of playground refurbishments. And for the sake of clarity, those playgrounds to be included in that package is Durrance Hill Road, Miswell Lane, Woodhall Farm, Warner's End Valley Upper, Apsley Lock, Croft Meadow, Tower Hill and Flaunton. I also wish the Council to note the Cabinet supports the principle of using SIL core funds on the following projects, subject to further information being provided by the project sponsors, as the Infrastructure Advisory Group didn't feel that the bids were sufficiently completed. And they are Breakspear School and Long Marston Village Hall, and that these projects will return to Cabinet for a final decision once further information is provided. I so move.
Does he need a second?
Mr.
Councillor Tindall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're happy to accept the amended proposals, although I do have a request for the leader. We are concerned that this motion, if this referral goes through, an acceptance of this cabinet referral will take decisions on millions of SIL funds. At the present time, we're talking of 3 million. Into the meeting rooms of this council rather than brought before this council for approval. I refer to 3.2 on page 239 of the Cabinet report, which states the Infrastructure Advisory Group was to make recommendations to Council, not Cabinet, Council, on how the SIL core funds were allocated and to determine which submissions for SIL funding should be prioritised. Also, I accept that Cabinet obviously is a key part of the process and that any recommendations from the IAG should go to Cabinet, but I am rather concerned that this council is then releasing its authority to the Cabinet, and so every member of this council and individuals or the opposition will not be able to take full part or debate in the recommendations put forward by the IAG. To cure that one, I would ask the leader whether or not he would be prepared to accept the deletion of 3.7E on page 240 of the Cabinet report, and I refer to that which states that, if I keep talking enough a line, I find it, that to remove, the E says to remove the need for all spending decisions to go to full council. If that was taken out, I'm sure I certainly would be happier than if it was left in. However, it may happen in the future anyway, but it would be helpful if we could have some acknowledgement that this council and all its individual members on something as vital as this in the distribution of monies should actually play a part.
Councillor Madden.
Thank you. Just a point of interest. You listed a whole load of play parks for refurbishment. There was no mention of Barnacres, which missed the refurbishments the last time around. And I just wondered if there's a reason for that, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's germane to this particular argument, Councillor Madden. It seems that it's a pretty crucial matter whether or not the council should delegate to Cabinet spending decisions that would normally come to the council. I think that's the nub of the argument. Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it was an anomaly when the SIL was set up originally that spending decisions would come to full council. I agree that releasing the money from the reserve, if you like, should come to full council. But we've just, we're in the process of agreeing, well, no, we've done it, the budget. Yeah, we've agreed the budget. And there are some big spending caps in there, but they won't all come to full council to be allocated. They will come through the process that we have as a council, because council sets the policy, sets the budget, and then it goes through all our different scrutiny committees or licensing committees or whatever it is to spend that money, and Cabinet, and then all members can attend all overview and scrutiny and Cabinet meetings. I have yet, certainly under this administration, to see any member of the council not allowed to speak at an overview and scrutiny or indeed Cabinet. In fact, we quite often have the Leader of the Opposition at Cabinet, and he is very welcome to say his bit, if you know what I mean. He is listened to, as any other councillor would be, because we all represent our constituents. We have a process in place, and I don't see how you could go through the individual bids as a motion. It really doesn't make sense. There's questions and stuff that people want to answer. And what's the worst thing they say? Don't generate a policy by committee or something like that. I think it'd be very, very confusing and totally against everything else, the way this council works.
Councillor Anderson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. We went through this at the Scrutiny Committee meeting in quite some detail. We went backwards and forwards. I think the issue for me is that if every single item of civil expenditure came to full council, it would be a bit like full council taking planning decisions. And it really needs to be done at a committee level, which gives members, whether they're members of the committee concerned or not, a full opportunity to participate, as Councillor Griffiths has said. And under that heading, I think there is also the comeback that members always have the call-in process, and that if there is a cabinet decision on any civil expenditure, then members of more than one, I can't remember the current requirement for the number of members for a call-in. I think it's 5 or 10, something like that. Hopefully it's 5. 5 members have the opportunity to call in any cabinet decision. So I'm afraid that's the reason why we can't remove 7E, I think it is. And the rationale behind it. I think it's up to members to really get involved in debates rather than complain about being left out when they have had the opportunity to participate anyway. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I think we should now go to a vote on the matter. Or do you wish to sum up, Councillor Williams? I'm not sure if you're allowed to. Yeah, Councillor Williams, you may sing up.
Councillor England wants to.
Councillor England.
Mr Mayor, are we talking about amendments or are we talking about the main thing or all of it?
The recommendation as amended.
The recommendation as amended.
Okay.
So actually, it should be not you, if I'm at this stage, I think, Councillor Williams. I think it should be Councillor.
If I can clarify, my request was not an amendment because I recognise, I was just asking the leader to take it out. If the leader doesn't, then I am recommending that we still accept the paperwork because in a few months there may be a chance to change it. What I'm saying, and so therefore I said earlier when I accepted the amendment as read out by Councillor Williams. So it's the substantive report that we're voting on.
Thank you. Thank you. Does that keep you happy, Councillor England?
I'd like to speak.
Yes.
Happy, good. SIL, Community Infrastructure Levy, clue is in the name. Less than 3 months before an election, which may see the council change hands. The portfolio holder and the chair of the Strategic Planning and Environment Oversight and Scrutiny Committee admitted that at Cabinet 14th February, they will abruptly remove the role of ward councillors in having oversight of decisions of the Infrastructure Assessment Group, the IAG, where the lead councillor is the portfolio holder, Councillor Anderson, and the chair of SPAY also sits, but full decorum representation is to be denied. This means that a 3 million raid on the SIL fund will be made before the election, and ward councillors, noting opposition councillors are almost completely excluded from chairing scrutiny, will be excluded from ratifying or otherwise these decisions. Councillor Madden has just given us an example of what we'll lose. Councillor Anderson will be the lead councillor on the IAG, making a recommendation to ... Councillor Anderson. Another way to do this would be for scrutiny to be opposition-led and thus involved in the IAG, but we tried to do something about that some years ago and got nowhere. Does the Cabinet think that this is appropriate governance for local infrastructure?
No. Yes, as Councillor Williams earlier stated, when Councillor Madden was trying to ask a question, this is not a question and answer session. But thank you for your contribution, and now I shall ask Councillor Williams to sum up.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You're absolutely correct. It's not a question and answer session, but it is possible for me to pick up points in the debate and mention and refer to them at the end. I referred to the list of playground refurbishments in response to Councillor Madden, because that was what was put forward the officers for an enhanced programme. In relation to Barnacres, my understanding was when the playground refurbishments were carried out before, given the nature of the sloping nature of the Barnacres site, it was penciled in for removal rather than refurbishment. I'm not sure what's happened to that. In relation to Councillor England's point, he would seem to draw the conclusion, and first point is, Council here is being asked to recommend one item of expenditure. It is unlikely, in his words, this raid on £3 million as a pre-election, that the rest of these items will make their way back to Cabinet before the election. The timescale for the organisations to submit their revised business plans is not going to permit the decision on this in March. So we expect this to be a post-election decision. And if he's as confident as he is, maybe he'll be involved in making that decision, but we again hope not. I do believe that this is an appropriate mechanism. This amount of money being spent, and it's 20% of our core seal, is a significant figure, but it's not significant against the other decisions that Cabinet takes. And Cabinet doesn't operate in isolation, as colleagues have said. Subject to call-in, lots of it goes to scrutiny, and it works its way up through the process. There is no part of the Cabinet process which all members cannot get involved in and cannot come along to talk to either speak to Cabinet, evolve it through the scrutiny process, or even if you feel it appropriate, challenge Cabinet decisions post-decision. The amount of money being allocated here, the decisions taken by Cabinet are well in line with the sorts of monetary figures that Cabinet spends. I don't accept this excludes any member from being involved in that. And indeed, if we're talking about the development of schemes to go to the IAG, ward members could be involved with those at an earlier stage. I also would query, in relation to Councillor Tyndall's point, this is a referral from Cabinet to Council, a Cabinet decision. I'm not sure I can stand here and amend a Cabinet decision on the hoof, because I don't think I have the authority to amend what Cabinet has put to Council. I would seek to be corrected if I'm constitutionally wrong, but I think that would exceed my authority. Cabinet is the senior decision-making under Council, and I don't think I'm in a position to amend what Cabinet has put to Council. Not in terms of taking something out of the process. So I moved the decisions the recommendations I moved, 1, 2 and 3, all being resolved to recommend refer those back to Cabinet for those other schemes that we like but didn't feel they were ready. I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. We'll now move to a vote.
Agreed.
I take it that everyone has cast their vote. We will now close the voting, and the motion has been passed by 39 votes to 1 against, with 3 abstentions. Thank you. So we now move on to, I've lost my place.
7.6.
7.6, thank you. The leadership team tier 2 and corporate support restructure. Is this the one where it's part 2? Do we know that there are any members of public here? So I assume we stop the recording at this stage.
It can just be moved as long as there's no question.
Okay, fine. Can we just move this, please, Councillor Williams?
Mr. Mayor, yes, I understand. I'm going to move to part 2, item 7.6. If it's agreed without discussion, I can do it in part 1. If you want to discuss it, we'll have to move it to part 2.
Fine.
So I'm going to move it and see where we go. So it's 7.6, CA 26 of 23, leadership, tier 2 and corporate support restructure, with a resolve to recommend under item 2 of that.
Seconded.
Agreed.
Fine, thank you. No need to go into part 2 in that case. So now we get to agenda item 8, the council tax report. Again, this will need to be voted upon as a matter of course. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Yes, as we are the collecting authority and we've set our budget this evening, we are responsible for collecting the precept of the County Council, the Police and Crime Commissioner, and where appropriate, town and parish councils. Having set our budget, this now pulls together the budgets of those 3 or 4 respective groups and sets the council tax for the Borough of Dacorum. And it starts with a recommendation on page 30, continues all the way down page 31 and on to page 32. They are all obviously factual, technical requirements, and I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded.
Fine. What, we don't need to vote?
Yeah, we do need to.
We still need to vote, apparently. It's, so please vote now. I see only 39 votes. $40. Has somebody died? Okay, thank you. That vote is passed by 41 votes, none against and 2 abstentions. Thank you. Agenda item 9, overview and scrutiny referrals, there are none. From, and now we move to agenda item 10, changes to committee membership. Councillor Williams? Councillor Tindall? Thank you. No changes. Changes to committee dates? Councillor Williams, Councillor Tindall, thank you. Okay, agenda item 12, call-in and urgency procedure. Well, call-in. Remember that in future. When it comes to cabinet decisions. Councillor Williams. Agenda item 12.
Yes, right, Mr. Mayor.
It's about business rate relief.
Yes, I have got on page 4 that under the course of the urgency procedure, it applies to inform before council decisions take that in the urgency powers, and not for decision, they are for information, so.
Correct. Thank you. I thought we had 3 mandatory votes. We've had them all, have we?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Colleagues, that concludes our business for this evening. Thank you for your forbearance. I'm closing the council at 5 minutes to 11 o'clock.